So they had microphones as well as cameras taking photographs, and then the illusion hid all the detection equipment, as well as it making look hip and stylish to be, the really popular place in town. So they had excellent recording all the way around the club. Hannah would swim in the tank as essentially hiding in plain sight, but she had audio feeds into there and she could direct, like, okay, listen to that table, now listen to that table, take a picture of that guy with that girl. Uh, yeah, and if a conversation was useful, then she could use the time distortion to keep it going. So if there was some guy pressuring, a selectman to push something through, and they were kind of still negotiating, she could actually hold them in that conversation to let them talk longer than they naturally would have, rather than going up to get to the bathroom and then losing the connection to something. Um, So they made this basically the most popular club in the city, used their connections to entice the rich and powerful to attend, and then listened in on their conversations, either stealing business opportunities, learning what stocks to buy or sell, or learning which ways politicians or officials were going to be moving, as well as learning whatever information they could to just to simply blackmail people. And it appears they had set this up as almost a legitimate business with a legitimate front. So there would be one person who would like be the director of human resources that would hire all of the bartenders and bouncers and people working in the front of the club, but none of them knew that there was anything nefarious going on. And besides that little break room where they all had coffee, all the other back rooms were closed to them. So this is why, like, the bouncers didn't seem to be giving you an evil eye, or they weren't armed, because they were just bouncers as far as they knew, just trying to work at this one particular club. Um, the text took a sample of the insulating material in the prison room, and they're a bit baffled by it. So it's almost kind of like a spray foam, but it's like almost like that silly string where you kind of spray it into place and then it just hardens. So it's like a foam or this spray, and it's all little like spaghetti strands. But each of the strands has a consistency that's kind of fibrous in nature, and when they analyze it with various EM fields, they found that all of these little strings are actually vibrating at like a certain frequency. It's almost like not just a sound canceller, but it's like an EMF interference as well, which is why some of your powers were acting a little funky in there when Oliver Ramos tried to teleport. He could teleport from this spot to this spot, but he kind of felt like almost like an echo in it. Like he could only teleport within that room, and the normal noises and stuff he would hear while moving, he was hearing it echoing like it was reverberating in this chamber. Um, so this seems to interfere with most electromagnetic fields. If radio was the thing, you would notice that the radios were completely dead in there, but radio doesn't exist here. So that was just the effect it seemed on having. This was so interesting, in fact, that investigators from the Empire, so like at kind of the federal level, they actually came down and confiscated the stuff and sent it off to their own lab to be analyzed, probably by someone like Dr. Braun, as well as Hannah's watch and its little EM reflectors. They sent all those off to the same lab. When you went through Hannah's office, on her desk, you found a photograph, a portrait of Janos Toth, who was the hat. He was the one that tricked you all down to that nightclub where you were gassed and then thrown into the truck, which was thrown into the river to sink to the bottom of the river. He was the one at the airfield that was making the hallucinations, and you started to go into the tower to do the fight, but you ended up having these little side jaunts. It was a photograph of him, and it looked like this. So it says, auf den guten alten Zeiten in Wien, halt den Kind hoch, Kleiner, mit Liebe, Janos. Which basically translates to the good old days in Vienna, keep your chin up, kiddo, with love, Janos. And from the photograph and the familiarity, you don't know if they just work together, if they were colleagues, if there's a familial relationship, or if it's a romantic relationship. The age difference is a bit, you're basically not quite sure how to read it, but there is a lot of familiarity there. I mean, Mitliba, you'd say that like with love, even the colleague you'd worked for years and years, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. And then Kleina, this is kind of, it's like saying kiddo or kid, and it doesn't necessarily mean like they're your kid. It could be if they were on a team together, and a bunch of like if all the super friends were getting together on a reunion. They saw Robin, they probably call him kiddo, because he was like a kid at the time they were all running as adults. So you have that in evidence, but you're not, and I'll put it in the evidence items, but you're not sure quite make what to make of that. So that was pretty much everything at the club there. You go back to the police department, and you're filing out paperwork, and you are all pulled into an interview room individually, and you're all told. So and the mood is a bit serious. It's almost like getting called to the principal's office, and you thought it all went pretty well. You're not sure why they'd be too upset. Um, but both David Oxenberg, who's the chief of the local department, and his sergeant Sarah Vesely is there. And they say, so Hannah Fedor, Timesmith, was taken into custody. She'd returned to normal form after being a mermaid, but she was still unconscious from the fight. But she wasn't responding. She was breathing and whatnot, but she wasn't responding or wasn't waking up to smelling salts. So they took her to a hospital, have her checked out, and doctors had found she'd suffered a stroke. And she's currently in a coma on a ventilator. She doesn't seem to be physically, have problems, but at least in her brain, she had a stroke. Um, Oh yeah, and then just side note, I was wondering if they had ventilators back then, and actually the very first ventilator was invented in 1928 in Boston, Massachusetts, and that was the negative pressure iron lung style, which is basically you're around your whole body and helps you breathe that way rather than like forcing air down. Oh, a kitten attack! You just like throw it at the back of Mike's head. There's clamps on. Ah! Um,
Do I feel like I did that a little? Did I go too hard on her? Maybe.
Well, so that's what they were, as they're talking to each of you. They said your reports that you filed say that, I mean, she was knocked unconscious during the fight, but there were also other witnesses that seemed to say there was this odd half naked man that was seen standing over her unconscious body, and then we learned out that that man was actually Oliver Ramos, and he looks different. Something about his appearance changing. No, and they say we understand, like you have a fight with a suspect, and it's not always possible to defeat them without injury or even death. I mean, if they're firing a gun at you, you're going to have to do what you can to put them down. But intentionally injuring someone who is an unconscious prisoner, it would be a serious offense if that happened. Uh, so they want you to each basically make a statement about what you saw at the end of the fight, and if you witnessed. I mean, essentially, once she was defeated, did someone just walk over and like kick her in the head or something, or throw her down the stairs, or they seem to be kind of leaning towards you. Maybe they're playing a little good cop, bad cop. They're like, look, we know it. You're trying to save people, and they're shooting guns at you, and you knock the gun out of their hand, they pull another gun out. Like, stuff happens, and okay, maybe you knock them unconscious and you give them a little thump to the gut when they're on the ground because you're pissed. But some of these things happen. But we have a major suspect. Like, her name is going to be in the newspaper, being the head of this syndicate, and she's in the hospital with a stroke. Like, if she shot at you and you shot her back and you hit her in the shoulder, we could explain that. But there seems to be witnesses that saying like someone might have attacked her while she was unconscious. And I'll go through it with each of you if you want to make a statement. Maybe the people who aren't chewing food can volunteer to go first. Well, funny you say it.
Well, Kirk, You know what, Kurt? Why don't you just go around the room and just call it out? Because it'll be easier
Yeah,
than all of us.
yeah. I guess I'll just use the last initiative order. So, well, I guess we'll start with Oliver Ramos. Essentially, key witness is you were very close to her, and you saw with great detail the status that she was in. And I know you can say whether you. I guess this is the same night, so I guess in theory you still look like Pee Wee Herman.
Naked.
You would have some identification and whatnot. You'd be able to somehow prove, and your other teammates are vouching for who you were. But they're almost approaching it, not even accusing you, just saying like, well, it sounded like you were nearby when she landed, hit the ground on the floor here, and after it had been turned into a mermaid, they kind of looking confused. But well, strange things do happen. Basically, like, do you have anything to say about what happened towards the end of the fight?
I mean, out of game. I don't think I actually.
Oh
did anything to it.
that's totally it too. So like out of game, you didn't actually do anything.
Okay.
And whether you'd actually decided to or not, but you were like thinking about it, and you didn't even say what you were going to do. You might have just like stabbed her and not actually killed her or something. And then Taylor, like you were also kind of hovering around there too. You were doing the thing with the watch, but the other guys couldn't necessarily see, so they might not know if you did something. And then, so I just decided to go with this, and I had another idea even before Eddie started his whole playing into his character, and that the hot-headed flaw and potentially hurting her. I already had some other possibility, so I'm just going with that. So yeah, I'm not. You didn't do something you forgot you did, and I'm like calling you out.
Okay.
I'm taking like the story bit that you were kind of doing and going with it because I was thinking of something similar, and then just rolling with it back onto the story. So then back in game, you have like these two like looking at you like, do you have anything to say, Mr. Ramos?
Okay, and they definitely know that it's me.
Well, you all don't know what they're saying to all of you, but I'm basically saying it's saying the same thing. I guess maybe this might be tailored to you and Taylor because you happen to be standing near her. You might think they would be asking your comrade, your teammates, did you see something happen over there? Did someone throw her down the stairs or whatnot? Or this is just them giving you your opportunity to make a statement. You could say something about why you look different or not, or you just brush it off, however you want to handle that. And then for as far as this, knowing what you did, that you did not actually do anything to her, you can play it however you want to play it. If you want to actually tell the truth or even lie and say you did for some reason, however you want to do it.
No, I'll just explain why I am what I am right now. And then, I mean, I'll just say what happened. The only other thing that I didn't want to, well, I did want to kill her, but I wanted to ask her a question, and that was why I was sticking around.
And just to remind you too, if you want to, you could use your silver tongue perk because you are in a long conversation with them, so you could evoke that. I think you have to talk to someone for like so many minutes.
Yeah, it's
Before
like 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But no,
So
I don't want to do that with them.
okay.
I'd rather do that with Mermaid Girl.
Yeah. And or I guess even if you don't use that perk, if you wanted to use your influence, persuasion, deception, or anything, I mean, in a way, you are telling the truth. But if you wanted to like shine it on, like use that charisma or something to make it even more convincing, you could make a roll too. And I would not make it like if you failed, they would think you're trying to deceive them.
Sure.
This is just to paint on your nicer shine.
See,
I mean, if you had done something to her and you were lying and I made you roll, then maybe if you had a bad roll, they would see through your deception.
Sure.
But you're not even deceiving them. You're telling the truth. You just be using, and it's not necessarily your powers because your persuasion, presence, deception. That's just like your personality. You have that social personality, so you could use that. To where they're coming out, they're like, "Oh wow, what a great guy! That Oliver, he's just a stand-up citizen." Who knows how it can play out. So if you want to, you can also do one of your roles to try to do that.
Normally if I wasn't a tall, pale, naked.
You do have some clothes, just some like like an extra police exercise jumper or something like that. So you're no
trench
longer
coat.
naked. I think honestly, like when the EMTs and stuff showed up, because some people had been injured, they would have thrown a blanket around you and got you some clothes. So yeah, Taylor, you do have your fez back.
Yeah,
you might
exactly.
want to have
Thank
that
you.
dry cleaned. I'm just saying.
I would have lent him my trench coat.
Yeah, or
But I-
well, actually, the coat room. Yeah, you could have grabbed. Actually, you might even have had your coat in the coat room. You could have grabbed.
I mean, yeah, I'll roll to see if I.
And you feel free to say like which ability you wanted to use and where you're going with
Oh,
it or
man.
anything like that. I mean, not putting you on the spot, but if you wanted to put some spin on it, you're welcome to. I was trying to give you, some like Lars is. I mean, and he made this character on purpose. A lot of you are. Yeah, Mike Blue Suit is the real toolbox mechanic. Like he can do all these little
Oh, sure,
widgets
sure.
and things and crowd control and no one really kind of just deals damage. So that's kind of Lars's thing. Your thing is the social aspect, and sometimes we do fights and you really get to use it. So try to give you an opportunity in case you wanted to play it smooth and sly, or even do something crazy like lie and say it was you and you did kick her in the head.
No, I don't. I definitely don't. I don't want to do that. Don't want to do that. No, so I think right now I'm still kind of. I'm in a very strange body that I don't like right now, so I'm gonna just
That's
stay
kind of throwing you off or something. Yeah, you're not feeling the cool vibe.
No, not with this right now.
Well, you're definitely a cool guy. I'll say that, Heavy.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess. Yeah.
I don't know. I think Paul Rubens is actually a really intelligent and creative person in the show that he like. There is people talking about like all the psychology, like the child psychology and stuff behind his TV show, and like I think there's a lot more to it than a lot of people. People think it's all just silly puppets and stuff, but everyone gets reduced to their worst possible things.
I was gonna say,
Like-
but I look like Pee Wee Herman.
You should be sitting there and you just pull your book out and go la 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 la
Yeah.
la.
I don't look like Paul Rubin. I look like Pee Wee Herman.
You do have the haircut and everything, yeah. Yeah, actually, when we did the appearances, I suppose I don't know, maybe the voice and stuff would go with it, but not necessarily the personality. It wouldn't. Your personality is not going to change, just how you look and sound. So maybe your voice is a little high, but you're not going to be doing the little laughs and stuff. Although if you wanted to role play into that, you could do that too. You could like feel it in the back of your head, like, why did I just laugh? That was messed up. But I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's it. That's all good. I'm just gonna tell him the truth, and that I still want to question her or ask her. I do have a question for her.
Oh, okay.
That's it.
So I mean, you're basically saying like, oh no, I was there when she went down. My abilities are like the social and interrogation. I can read their minds and stuff. I was trying to do that, but she was just out, and I couldn't hit it.
Yeah. No reason to lie.
Okay.
I didn't do anything bad this time.
And I'll go to the Verwandler. You get called into the principal's office, and they sit you down, and they're not mean or brutal or they're not throwing you against the wall or anything. And they do the same thing with the others, the normal like, well, this is what we thought happened. And then they kind of turn to you and say, "Now you were standing by Oliver Ramos. Did you notice anything? Were you doing anything?"
I'm gonna tell them that the area seemed dangerous, so I wanted to like I didn't know if there were other people there still, so I wanted to like get her away and so she doesn't like die.
Oh, and they said, is it true that you were the one that turned her into a mermaid? Did this
Just
miniature
a little bit.
child mermaid? They're like, what's I mean, maybe just to step back, just curiosity, like tactics wise, was there something you were thinking like this would give you an advantage in the fight? I mean, is that what you were originally shooting for? It sounded like she actually operated as a mermaid in the tank. Were you making like an ironic power choice or something like that?
It was more to slow her down, but it only half a worked.
You're
I wanted to turn her into an actual fish. I only got the latter half.
Okay, and so Dave is kind of making some notes on a little side piece of paper before he returns to the main one. So when she went down, were you with her right there, or was Oliver Ramos alone with her for any period of time?
I would say that me and Oliver got to her at the same time as she crashed.
Okay, and then you said you picked her up and then started to walk her away because the area was dangerous. You just mean the fight in general?
Yeah, I didn't know if the glass was the whole glass thing that was going to flood or not. I didn't know if other bats were coming in. I don't know. I just wanted to get out of there.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I think we're good. All right. Actually, one more. So we saw you were on the east end of the second floor. You were walking south. It looked like towards the stairs. Were you heading anywhere in particular behind the bar to the back room? Were you taking her downstairs?
Oh, I was just taking her outside. I didn't want to be in that place. I didn't know if anything else was coming on. I mean,
Oh,
that was
okay.
really it.
We some of the witnesses we spoke with, they said that there were these lights and there was an announcement to leave the club. So when you were taking her outside, was this after that there was this announcement and most of the people had left the club?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, and if you're not remembering out of game, it was
Yeah. No.
towards the end they were all gone. Okay, so back in. So they said, okay, so there was this evacuation notice. There were these lights. Everyone was leaving the club. It was mostly emptied out. It was towards the end of the battle. TechBat was still firing these lasers around the room. I guess he did some sort of death blossom. They were shooting everywhere, and you thought she might have gotten caught in the crossfire. So you
Oh
were
yeah.
going to carry her out.
He was still somewhere around. We didn't get him. He could have been invisible. I just want to get the hell out of there.
Right. Well, no, we appreciate you trying to secure her safety and get her out of the line of fire. But I mean, what about the rest of your team? Were you worried that one of them could have gotten taken down without you and Mr. Ramos helping them towards the end?
They're all very capable. I would say. I wouldn't normally go around worrying about them.
Okay. Well, I suppose it was true. The TechBat was knocked out only maybe 30, 60 seconds after that, if less, from everyone's reports. So the battle did seem towards the end. You just got to run down these. Anytime there's an injury or something, you got to make sure you cross all your T's and dot your I's.
And then like actually worried, like I'm just like, could I have done that to her? Like I only like knocked her out. Like I didn't really mean to hurt her like that if I did do that.
Yeah, and I'll take that because I think you're even saying that like as your player, saying like, did I actually hurt her or something? So
Yeah.
we'll play that as you are honestly emoting like you're actually afraid you almost hurt her too much by accident.
I was the one who
trying
dealt the final blow too.
Um, yeah, I mean, you in your report you did describe the length of the fight, and between all, I mean, I know this is defeating him. It's not really damage, but you did a phenomenal amount of damage. Like I wanted to give you a target that you could really just lay into with a lot of attacks and banes and just burn them down, and then have to kind of recover from that. So there was a lot of attacks. She got shot several times and zapped several times. So it's not like you were the only one that laid a hand on her, and you are one more melee. So you probably felt like, well, I literally hit her, so maybe I did something more. So we'll play that way. The rest of the meeting goes fine. I mean, you also playing that character that's normally stealing some, on the up and up, but still a little crazy, kind of stealing some stuff, kind of going if anyone's going to be painting outside the lines, it's going to be you and Oliver. So you have that kind of character, and you're a little bit used to that scrutiny of your superiors giving you that kind of eye, and you feel a little bit better by the end. Of, you thought like, oh crap, I'm in trouble now or something, but you feel a little better because you like going into it, you thought like, oh crap, what did I do? So yeah, that you didn't feel too bad as you were leaving.
Also, do you want me to roll a deception check for kind of lying to him?
Well, you can do it the same as Eddie. So I mean, you give your choice: presence, persuasion, or deception. And because again, you're not actually lying, there won't be any penalty. But if you want to try to push it in the other direction, you can.
It is kind of a lie because I'm not. Well, I'm just omitting the fact
Well,
that there was a
it
little.
is a lie of admission because your character did feel that Oliver Ramos might have actually hurt her, and if anything, that's the deception that you're kind of doing.
Oh, okay. Well, it's,
I just say it's kind of masked by the fact that you are honestly nervous that you did something yourself. So that I think is a little easier to read in your face.
I rolled a 14 for deception.
Okay, that's fine. Where's one keyboard? Just here. I'm trying to find this Freud quote. That would be perfect. Yeah. So with that, you are trying to do this deception of not letting on this omission that you were worried that Oliver Ramos was going to kill her. You're also trying to kind of lie that you weren't totally trying to steal that gold watch, but you were honestly nervous about actually having hurt the person. That earnestness, I think, comes through. So the role, the result still stands. You leave there not worried, that they, or at least you don't think they think you did anything bad. So Sigmund Freud said, "He that has eyes to see and ears to hear may convince himself that no mortal can keep a secret. If his lips are silent, he chatters with his fingertips. Betrayal oozes out of him at every pore." It's that thing about how hard it is to kind of lie. It's easy enough to not say anything or say the opposite, but all those little things that those detectives are trained to see kind of come oozing out of every little pore and stuff, and that's where the deception role seems to come in.
Yeah.
All right, so next up they have a Blitzman come in. So the same review with the fight, and said this Hannah Fedor ended up having a stroke and is in the hospital on a ventilator, and you are a little shocked at that. She certainly seemed to be able to take a beating from your side, and maybe you feel a little bit guilty because you of all people were dishing damage. You were just like unleashing these lightning bolts, across her. But they do, and they don't focus on that about your specific attacks. They seem to be focused on, in all of your reports, you were all still engaged with TechBat towards the end, and Oliver Ramos and the Metamorph were seen lingering or hanging around and potentially unconscious Hannah Fedor. Did you see anything that went on there? Anything unseemly? Same thing. They say, "Look, we understand. It's an they're trying to kill you all. You're trying to put them down. And maybe you get angry and you kick them in the gut while they're down, but." We could almost kind of see that, but this is kind of serious. If someone did this to her while she was unconscious, we're going to have to go to the press and say, we arrested this big time crime ring that did all these terrible stuff, and she's in the hospital with a stroke. And people are going to say, like, oh, geez, the police force, excessive force and all these charges. So they're trying to get everyone's opinion beyond what you wrote in your report, which I know you didn't actually write. Anything else you have to say?
I say that we used only appropriate and necessary amounts of force on each of the individuals. As she was up on the second floor, I was on the first floor. All I saw was she was incapacitated, and my assumption was that Oliver Ramos was guarding her and cuffing her to prevent her from further action.
Yeah, I'll pull back to where everyone was.
From where I was, I wouldn't have been able to see her, right? I mean,
yeah. Like, actually, I think you were standing here when she was like going flying across and then just crashed into the table. So
Right.
that would have been the last thing. Like I think you were like firing some shots. She finally went down and crashed with Metamorph like right behind her, and then you immediately started focusing on just laying into Tech Bat.
Right. So what I'm getting at is from where I am, from where my character was, there's no way I would have been able to actually see her even land. And being that those two guys are up there and I didn't hear any more or any further signs of battle, I assumed that they had subdued her.
Yeah. And they said, yeah, we understand that was in your report, and it sounded like from where you were standing, and we've gone through and walked the scene, you wouldn't have been able to see. But it's one thing to file a report. I mean, you can forget stuff. It's another thing when you're actually interviewing someone. Say you're all walking out of there, and all around is like, where I really got her good, or you heard her tumbling down the stairs or something. They're going to at least ask. So yeah, they both say, all right, that sounds pretty good. Do you have anything else, or is that it?
Yeah, in relaying this information, I keep going back to we used the appropriate amount of necessary force to subdue the subjects. I just kind of keep going back to that.
Yeah, and then they agree. She did seem to take a beating, but she was pretty powerful. And I mean, Sarah even says, like, look, don't get us wrong. If our entire police force, SWAT, everything went in there, they'd probably all be dead. So it's amazing you guys even made it out alive, and it's good on you for bringing her down. And however you bring them down, even if you had to shoot them in the head, and that was the only way because they were just going to re-engage the time freeze or something, that'd have been fine. Our only concern is there's evidence that she might have been unconscious when she was injured, resulting in a stroke, and that's our main concern. So,
I don't know anything about that.
Gotcha. All right. Nope. Thank you very much, Luca. We're all set. So you head on out, and Shooting Star. And I'll go back to the map so you can see where you.
Yep.
Yeah. You were down
on the bar,
floor, standing on the bar. I mean, I suppose you might have been able to see them, but
I wouldn't have been able to see on the floor back there. No way.
Yeah, even from up on the bar, I don't think you would have probably seen her go down, but you couldn't have seen them over there.
Yeah.
Like maybe when the Verwandler came walking down this way towards the rail, and then like Blitzman, you're in your report, you were saying this is where you were shooting up in the air at Tech Bat,
Yep.
and him flying around towards the exit. It was almost in the opposite direction. But they basically lay all that out. Is there anything else you heard or saw? Did you hear him grumbling or going into the place? Someone say like, "Oh, I'm going to kill that bitch" or something like that.
Which one is asking me? It's important.
Oh, yeah. So here it is, David.
Right.
He's kind of leading the conversation.
Me. Okay.
She is kind of being nice, but as much as she's kind of doing good cop, her eyes, she's really watching you. It's almost I don't know, for you, it's almost uncomfortable just as a woman. But on top of that, she's paying a little bit too much attention to your every little breath and move, and that's kind of setting you on as well.
Yeah, and I'm focused directly on him. I'm not ignoring her, but I'm not looking at her at all.
Yeah.
Because of my issues. So I'm focusing on him so I don't forget anything. And I say, no, I took several shots at her, but once she was down out of the picture, I was focused on the bat and trying to shoot it down. And that was, seeing her go to the side was the last I saw of her. Didn't see anything else of her, as I said in my report.
Okay. He seems to just nod and look over at Sarah, and then she asks you, so what do you think of Ala Ramos as a teammate?
I kind of start flustering. I'm like, I haven't really seen anything that he's done that's really bad. Because as my character, I don't think I really have seen him do anything bad, because I didn't join him right at the beginning.
Yeah, this is more difficult for you because in theory you've been with the team since the beginning, but you really haven't, so you haven't
Right.
noticed all that. But anyway, back in, she said
Yeah.
it's interesting that you went right to bat. I was just thinking your assessment of how good a job he does or what he brings to the team.
Oh, is that
went
what you
right to
mean?
him doing things
Well,
bad.
no, as far as I've seen, he's been very helpful to the team, and I'm like fumbling with something on the table, and I can't. I'm shuffling papers, yeah, and
So and
so
she says you seem awfully nervous. Are you okay?
uh, uh, to be honest, I'm just not real good around women. I just blurted out, totally embarrassed. I go all red.
She seems she's not angry, but she's not laughing or anything too.
Yeah.
She means, do you mean working with women as far as how they do the job? Or...
Not that you're not somebody who's good to work with. Beautiful women just throw me off.
Oh, okay. She kind of has like a nod or a clarification, and you just you're nervous. Your eyes are kind of darting between.
Yeah.
And now you actually notice while David was very flat through the whole thing and asking his questions, now his eyes are like the eye of Sauron, just like drilled into you.
Yeah.
And you're almost thrown off by him looking. He doesn't bother you as a guy, but you did see him kind of really drilling in and staring.
Yeah. I say, no. Eddie's done fine, and I'm happy to work with him. They just throw me off.
Okay. And then it goes back to David, and Sarah starts scribbling some notes down in her book. And he said, well, after the whole event, I mean, it seems like his clothes had got burned off, so you were all kind of coming down from the fight, getting him some clothes. Was anything said like, "Oh wow, that was a tough fight," or I'm glad she's out of it for, did anyone make any kind of comments or things like that? And you guys we didn't role play any of this, so
but
you can.
I would have said no. I didn't hear anything like that.
Or throw him under the bus and say, well, actually, he did say I totally wanted to kill that bitch as we were walking out.
No, because I
you
wasn't
come outside and drag
hear
Eddie
that.
off, like, no, you liar.
Yeah, no. I said no, I didn't hear anything like that. I mean, she really scared me when she had me fall through the walls. That was really weird. And then she started coming close to me. It was awful.
What was she?
Remember when she was laying on the floor?
No. I know what you meant.
Oh,
she was laying on the floor, but
yeah,
he read something about that in your report. But he's asking because he seems confused. Like I get the falling, but wait. What did she do when she came close to you?
Oh, I'm trying to remember exactly what she said, but she was like coming on to me or something. It was really weird.
Yeah, that's all. That's all I was saying. You're basically you're retelling. You put it when you write it in the report. Sometimes it loses some of its vibrance. So you're like, she was this beautiful woman.
Yeah, she was gorgeous, and she was laying on the floor next to me, and I didn't know what to do.
She was doing that
right away.
Yeah. So and with that, he goes, oh, and you hear Sarah kind of scribbling some more notes and stuff.
Yeah.
And they say, all right, no, it sounds good. I wouldn't worry about it. We have to check these things out just in case. Thank you for your time, Mr. Sandine. If you go ahead and head back to the bullpen out there.
Yep.
And finally, they call in the blue suit.
Okay. So same thing.
Yeah, and you were.
Yeah. So
actually, I think you were originally up on the second deck, and you rocket booted down onto the bar to shoot at Tech Bat, see him like ricochet off the fish tank and stuff. I think you were originally up here fighting Tech Bat.
So I go straight the way I've always been, which is by the book. You have my report. I don't know, but I trust my people. I've been working with them extensively now. So I wouldn't ever think that any of them would do anything with a perp. Even though I know Oliver is prone to do certain things, I wouldn't think that this. I don't say this out loud. I'm just saying. Even I know that he is prone to do certain things. I just say, my people are professionals. We're professionals. Unfortunately, I was a tad unprofessional. You read in my report, the stupid bat went after my tech. I lost myself a little bit, and actually, I didn't even see the other side. I only saw him, and I wanted to take him out because he was so annoying.
They said, yeah, we did get that from your report and from the other witnesses. It seemed like you almost went kind of apoplectic. You were just kind of stuttering and almost almost choked or froze in the moment. And was that it? Was his comments about your tech threw you off or something?
Well, I only make the best. That's what I am. As an engineer, I strive for perfection. So when people don't know what they're talking about, of course it upsets me.
Oh, okay. So yeah, it's it's a kind of
Pride.
professional pride
It's
thing,
pride.
and
Pride.
it was a villain insulting your tech.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. How long have you been building this stuff or anything? I
I've been
suppose
working
really.
well. I've been I guess it's like they must know my secret identity. I guess I've been a watchmaker since I was 18.
Yeah, I guess they probably wouldn't have like extensive records
Right.
on you, just kind of the basics of your history as a watchmaker.
Yeah.
But I don't know the way this is David talking. He's almost saying like just out of curiosity, like
Sure.
because all kids like taking apart stuff. Like how long have you been doing this? He's almost you almost feel like he's asking like what did it take to be able to build like rocket boots or something?
Well, and then so this is now he's kind of feeding my ego on this. So it's like it is that it's taking a lot. It's thinking outside the box. It's looking at different problems and solving them from a different perspective. And it takes iterations, just like any sort of science. As an engineer, you have a Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 3, and as you go, there's new improvements and you just keep tweaking until you'll always be tweaking. I'm guessing it'll never be finished. So
Okay. And then in any of your past missions, I mean, obviously, if you have anything that's specific to Vienna that we don't really have jurisdiction over, but you've spoken about working with Mr. Ramos. Has there been any time, because his abilities seem to be more the social aspect and interrogating witnesses, he's pulled clues out for you before that you've been able to run down to actually find suspects? In any of his past interrogations, were there any times that you felt like he went over the line? I mean, we all have those suspects where there's a girl sealed in a room and she's going to asphyxiate in an hour. So you might punch the guy a couple of times. It's not by the book, but as long as you're not breaking the guy's arm, things happen. There is that gray area. Do you think have you ever felt worried like you needed to watch him, that he would go beyond or too far, even for the right reasons?
the only thing that I ever disagreed with him on was when he spit in a priest's face.
It's like, whatever brought that on?
We were in the middle of helping the priest. Obviously, he has a strong emotional reaction. I don't know if he was touched as a child. I'm not sure, but
I was going to say, was this a Catholic priest? Or?
yeah. So I just kind of I'm like, other than that, like from a work perspective, I've never had any sort of I've never had any worry that he wouldn't have my back and that he wouldn't. I'm by the book. You know how I operate, and I've never seen anything that's been out of line that's made me go to even, because if it was, I would have stopped him. And I've never had to do that with anyone on the team.
Yeah, no. We've read your past reports and the reports of your superiors, and that seemed to be the case. That's kind of why we wanted to talk to you last, was that if anyone, yeah, like we said, there's always this gray area, but even within every team, there's going to be those different shades of gray, and those team members that are more willing to get a little dirty, and then those ones that just have absolutely no line whatsoever. And even in some cases, both extremes can be too much. Well, I don't know if everyone's seen Kickboxer, but show everyone your T-shirt. There's a Jean-Claude Van Damme Kickboxer. The guy takes him to this bar and he gets him really drunk, and then he pays a bunch of guys to beat him up. So he has to fight them drunk, and while he's there, he starts doing this dancing. It's just absolutely terrible. It's so painful. So
And he's clapping and he's doing all this shit.
Yeah.
You just like watching it, just like cringing.
it's cringeworthy. Yeah. So someone did this 8-bit Nintendo game cover
Yeah.
called Van
Dan
Dancer.
Dancer.
That's like the
I had to have it. Why are those guys so pissing me?
All right, so yeah, you're all free to go, and they thank you for writing up the paperwork. And again, great job at the club. They're going to be able to handle the wrap up, searching the place for contraband, other clues, running footprints and stuff. The biggest thing they wanted was your statement, obviously, and your report of just what happened, and that Martin is safe. He is under guard. And oh yeah, I'll go for if there's any questions before you go. But other than that, you're basically free to go. To like go back to the hotel. It's pretty late now. It's probably like 11 to midnight. Merton is gonna have to have like 24 hours rest at least before the hospital let any of us talk to him. So go ahead and take the day and just sleep and rest in if you want to run down stuff on your own. But you're basically not due back at this police station until it's Tuesday, so like Thursday morning
So
when we'll go to the hospital and talk to Merton.
I
Go
do
ahead.
make sure. I just asked. I want to make sure that they did get the timepiece. That it was put in evidence and it was. They have it.
Yeah, they did. In fact, as I said, like they don't even have it anymore. So whenever they because of it is this world of superheroes and supervillains. A lot of time there are artifacts and elements and things that are dangerous. But you take the ray gun off of the bad guy, and who knows if it's radioactive? They have to give it to the lab guys or like the equivalent of kind of like the bomb techs to make sure it can be safely stowed. And that watch and the insulation material in that room like sent off all the flags. So they actually had someone from like the federal office come. They just be like their equivalent of the FBI is be like
Okay.
the Ministry of
I
Interior.
didn't know if it disappeared under a fez. That's all.
Yeah. So I mean, I think you may have been asking your motivation was because you're worried about it getting stolen or going missing, but they took it as maybe you're just interested in the tech or you wanted to make sure all the evidence got gathered. But you did seem, as much as that makes sense, you do find it a little odd that like the feds would kind of swoop in and just snatch it all up. Like usually you'd think like the local department would kind of look at it for a while and then send it on once they were done with their tests, whereas they kind of came in and grabbed it. But then
Especially
again,
since they have their own super team as well. Like I know, they also have. So
they do. So it's similar to you. So back in Vienna, your police headquarters, and there are several there. It is a normal police department out front. It's got a little bit of extra barracks and stuff for you guys, and then there is this science division in the back, which does all the tests. They take your blood work. They do run special tests. They're the ones that were training you. You were constantly in their little medical area. It's like a little superhero kind of support development team. The whole superhero thing is new too, so they kind of want to know like how did you get your lightning powers, and is it something in their blood they can inject into someone else and give them lightning powers? They're kind of studying you all as you're going or as you're going through training. Since you went active duty, they've just kind of been lingering in the background, healing up some wounds and taking blood samples and stuff like when you're exposed.
did you watch the South Park COVID special, the pandemic special?
No.
You have to watch. You just remind me. It's like Randy Marsh. Has this basically. It's not going to ruin anything, but Randy Marsh finds out he has like the immunity to COVID because like he had sex with his bat or whatever. So he's putting himself into like his weed, his Integrity weed, and giving it to people, and people are smoking it and getting a Randy Marsh mustache. So every time he looks at people, he looks at me. He's like, "There's a little bit of Randy Marsh and everybody."
I'll have to watch it. So yeah, I mean they have their own superhero teams. So they do have that kind of the lab guys in the back, as well as their own analysis. But then again, I mean, yeah, if there was some nuclear powered submarine that got confiscated, the government's probably going to want to hold on to that. And the only thing that makes you kind of feel better is you've seen the kind of, as far as what everyone has said, even Merton, what kind of a person that this Doc von Braun is, and that this is the type of guy who would be looking at this stuff. So you're like, well, we'll just file that away and check into that later. see if anything comes about it. So yeah, you do head back to the hotel. You head up to your room. So again, you're all, there's like one, it's like a long thin hotel. You're all on the top floor at the south end, right by the stairs. You kind of got all those four rooms right at the corner. You head up there, you go back into your rooms, and each of you smell just the faintest hint of tobacco smoke, kind of like lingering in your room, or stirred up from something. But upon searching your room, like nothing is missing, nothing's out of order. The lock doesn't seem tampered with. And I mean, a lot of people do smoke in this day. I mean, you wouldn't think the maid service would be smoking, but I mean, I guess they could be. But still, it still kind of gives you the heebie-jeebies, kind of having seen thinking someone else is in your room. But overall, your any paranoia you had is eventually outweighed by exhaustion, and you all finally crash and go to sleep. Basically, take a full day off at which you can do anything you want to do, and then it'll be Wednesday the 12th that you'll be going to the hospital to speak with Merton. So, between that night of going to sleep and the whole next day, if you had something you wanted to do or run down, or if you had any other questions before we continue on the rest of the story, feel free to throw anything out.
Merton has a police detail with him, right?
Yes.
All right, just want to make sure.
Yeah, I think I did mention originally, and I think I threw a comment in, that he had a protection detail, but yeah, he since so many people have been after him, he does have a pretty serious detail, and yeah, as much as you've gotten along pretty well with the chief and his sergeant. You were thrown off at first when you were almost like attacked, cornered and attacked in this airplane hangar, but since then you've gotten the feeling that, like, well, no, you guys all are running around with these super powered weapons, and they didn't want a bunch of yahoos just running around their city blowing shit up. They wanted to make sure you were decent folk and could handle yourself. And since you passed that and you went out to that one dinner with them, you kind of see them as like professional colleagues now, and you're a bit more comfortable with them. Let's see, let's close these guys out. So if there's nothing else, you go to see Merton Marquardt at the hospital. And I guess going into the hospital, you're all gonna speak with him as a group, essentially get all the info. But just for going into the hospital room to see him, who's going in first?
I'll go first.
Okay.
Are we only allowed one in at a time?
Well, no, it's just, I mean, there's, as far as the size of the door, you're walking this group, just for story.
I see.
I was like, who's literally going to be at the head of the front of the line? So you get up to that floor, you check in with the guard, sign in, show your ID. You'll go several police guards. You get approval from the head nurse of the floor to enter the room. You open the door, and it's a very nice private hospital room suite. So he's got his own bed, his own bathroom. There's not, other patients and stuff around, and you do have some privacy. You're able to close the door.
How are you?
Let's see. At a glance, Merton is looking in much better shape. The evening before, he had this harried, drained look on his face.
How are you doing?
The bags under the eyes.
What are you doing?
You swear you'd even noticed like gray hair on his temples, but looking at him now, his hair is still like mostly brown, so he doesn't have quite as much gray as you remember him having the night before. It's almost part of that, kind of drained feeling. Let's see. Maybe look a bookmark. That's where I am. So is his wife Teresa Marquardt, the public defender that you'd interviewed in their apartment? She's sitting in a chair by his bedside. And when you open the door and walk in, she leaps out of her chair, runs over and grabs the first of you. So the blue suit just grabs you in a big hug, and she's crying and doing this and says, "Thank you for finding him, for bringing him home safely." And she doesn't know what she'd do without him. She's just kind of kind of falling over. So she kind of apologizes, but she addresses you all as a group and says, again, thank you. I didn't think I'd ever see him again, and he's my whole life. So I'll let you have a talk with him. And she heads down to the cafe to get to some tea and stuff, as she's pretty much been up all night watching over it. So again, Merton Jakob Markart, he is a lab assistant and a postgrad, a docent, a lecturer at the Technische Universität Berlin, which is kind of like their MIT. Yeah, he introduces himself kind of formally, gives his whole background, as well as his whole history with the Dr. Ernst Lamprecht von Braun. I'll go splits on this guy too. He talks about the doctor's history, and he's on his own. He's kind of reiterating what the police had said about him, of a guy that he is definitely strange and atypical, and kind of difficult socially, at least in social settings to deal with, or maybe even as as the government having to deal with one of their people. But at heart, he is just a real sweet, nice guy. He also talks about how he would always work on several projects at once. So, yeah, I imagine working on like the cure for cancer and heart disease at the same time. I mean, these are like two massive, insurmountable problems you're working on. And he would always have like 5 to 7 of these different problems he would work on at once and just bounce between, as he found that while working on one project, it would actually give him an inspiration for one of the others. And the second he got stuck, he would just immediately drop it and set it aside. And it was either his subconscious would keep chewing on the problem, or it was the action of switching his mind to a fresh frame to attack a different problem. He might actually come up with a solution to one of his other projects. And that the police didn't, or the government didn't really come to this conclusion. Merton, as his friend, thought this was the case of why he seemed so mercurial in his switching between projects is he would use them as launching off points to get back to the other ones and make more progress with others. But still, it did seem like whatever project he was on, he just threw himself into, and he never understood the motivation behind it. So he had met the doc, as he called him, as a student at the Technical University of Berlin. He had helped him out with some of his experiments, and over time, the two became close friends. Now, Merton, as brilliant a guy, I mean, he has his own PhD. As brilliant a guy as Merton is, he is just a nothing compared to the level that the doc is operating on. This is like someone with like multiple PhDs. So, this isn't like really like a balanced, like kind of research relationship. But he said, besides becoming friends, he thinks the reason he kept Merton on, or would work a lot with him, is he would often have these outside of the box revelations that the doc would be so deep in the math, he'd be kind of calcified in it. He wouldn't be able to just have the free imagination to throw out possibilities. You'd say, like, well, what about this? And if you look at it, it's like, well, that's insane. There's no way that would work because of this. Merton doesn't know that. He's just throwing out ideas. But every once in a while, one of these ideas would be a genuine breakthrough. So he was kind of his, like, not even lucky charm. He was contributing to the effort, if at least on a abstract just idea, throwing out brainstorming. Martin was kind of like a catalyst for the doc and could kind of get him going on a project. But still, he never followed him around. He never went with him to these different projects. He made his own life, he does his own research. He enjoys teaching, and it's just whenever the doc shows up to ask him for help on something that he actually will. And he said, as much as that has all been great, it's actually been a while since the two have even talked or worked together on stuff. And he thought, well, he must be getting old. Maybe he's kind of moved on and he doesn't need me anymore. Yeah, he's getting self-conscious. I don't know, maybe I'm getting old and I'm getting less flexible. I'm just going with the old ideas and I'm not good at that inspiration anymore. So he said it wasn't like they were estranged, but they just had kind of fallen out of contact. Just struggling, Josh and Smith. He says, and then several weeks ago, the doc just showed up in Berlin. He found out he was there on sabbatical, working at the university, the technical university. But it was odd because the doc never said hello to him. I mean, here he has set up a lab on the same campus where his friend works. He hasn't spoken with him in years, and he didn't even approach him or talk to him. He said he had to go by the doc's lab and say like, "Hey, how long has it been?" Kind of introduce himself. And he said after speaking with the doc there, he invited him to dinner at his apartment with Teresa, and the three of them had this nice, lovely kind of dinner where they all kind of chatted and got caught up. And he said something about that night must have changed something in the doc's mind because the very next day he asked Merton to help him out on his project. And in fact, he even called him on. He said, "Look, I don't want you to just feel bad for me, and think I have nothing to do, like to help you out." But he said that the doc was really sincere. Like he really actually did need his help on it. He did feel needed. Um, the only thing was he made Merton swear that he would not ask him what the project was about. So he would basically help build and run the machinery, monitor power levels, record data, but he had no idea what the scope of the experiment was or what they were even doing. He says, I had to keep it operational, run the basic power up sequences. The math is way beyond me as much as I understand physics. He says, I mean, I get the basic principle involved. It is some kind of portal, like clearly a portal to some other location, but I don't know where it goes, and he wouldn't tell me. Merton's guess is he says, I think the other end of the portal opens up into some kind of massive subterranean cave, maybe even like under the ocean or just underground cave, and some kind of wide open cave with life in it. If not animal life, at least plants, fungus, bacteria, because he was bringing back organic samples, and there had to be water there too. He said they'd sent drones in through this what he thinks is a portal, and these drones were kind of just little machines built on like little fake tank treads, like a little baby tank with arms that could pick up stuff and bring it back or carry these barrels through. And he said these drones, they were meant to go on rough terrain. That's why he thinks it's like subterranean and not, or if it's not subterranean, that it's an island like nobody's ever been to that must be rocky or something like that. Like is some place where they're pulling back biological samples from. He said originally when he was bringing back these barrels, I thought it was some kind of finding a new source of oil. Again, why it would be subterranean. But that didn't make sense because the Empire has this electric power system that's working pretty well. And I mean, oil reserves would be great if there was like an energy crisis or something. And I mean, you could always sell it, but it's such a mundane idea, just finding more oil. That's not the way the dock operates. It's got to be something else. And he said the reason he thinks it's some kind of biological sample. He said I saw a small amount of this substance in a glass vial once. I think it's a biological sample, perhaps some kind of new organic compound, some kind of liquid biomass, maybe an algae. That's why I was thinking like the cave under the ocean. Um, he said, and one of these samples that he found must have really interested him because once he found that, we didn't fire up the portal for like a whole week. He just focused on analyzing this little glass sample. And because he didn't need to open the portal for a few weeks, he told Merton, he basically told Merton and Teresa to take a vacation. He said basically they're not going to be firing up for a while. He's got to do some math, take some sample, or test the samples. And he sent him, Merton and his wife, on holiday to Begrenz am Bodensee. So this is Lake Constance, which is way in the southern edge of Germany, right over the border from Switzerland. They're in Berlin, which is way up in the northeast corner. But it was one of these like lake cottages that the doc's family or cousin or someone had owned. Wasn't being used. It was the summertime. They just went down and spent the week there. Uh, and when I left, he was going to be analyzing the sample, and the doc mentioned that also he was going to be sending a large amount of this sample to a colleague at the University of Vienna named Professor Abraham Borchardt, the head of the biochemistry department. And it's saying that you remember that that Professor Borchardt was the guy at the University of Vienna that you guys took the sample to. So when you guys finally got, you had a few of the apparatuses, the little breathing device with the charger on it, but you hadn't any samples of the actual liquid. And when you finally got one, you took it to him. The police department said that Dr. Van Braun was the one to go to, but since he was on sabbatical, this was like your next best bet, the head of the biochem department. And when you took it to him, he said he had no idea he would need some more samples to be able to test it. And even then, the Professor Van Braun would be really the one to ask. He would just be taking a wild stab in the dark, almost as an amateur. And yet now you're hearing from Merton that the doc sent it to him to be checked out, seemingly when the doc couldn't figure it out. So now you're concerned about this guy that you'd spoken with earlier. And because of everything that's happened, you're wondering if that professor even has maybe any connections to the Character Syndicate, because they mainly operate down like in Vienna. He's all the way up in Berlin. How did they even find out about this stuff or what was going on? So Merton said when he came back from vacation, the doc was gone. He couldn't find him anywhere. The machine in the lab was in the same state. Actually, the lab was really in the same state as you found it. A lot of the the electrical components were burnt out and broken and not working right. The lab was spick and span clean. He said you could actually smell bleach, like someone had really scrubbed the whole place down. All of the samples, the liquids, the biological samples were all gone. All of those drums were completely cleared out and cleaned. All of the doc's notes, paperwork, everything was gone, and the doc himself was gone. Um, where is it? So the portal itself, when they first opened the portal, it was incredibly unstable. It took a lot of energy just to keep it open. And they sent a drone through the portal with a sort of relay unit to drop on the other side. It would be like a mini portal machine that would take the signal and reflect it back to the original transmitter, making a loop. So you didn't have to dump all this energy to keep the portal open. It would kind of act as kind of like a foot in the door and stabilize it, so it would be a lot easier. And even the first couple of drones that they tried to send in were just getting smashed and damaged, and it took a few before they got one chunky enough to make it through and drop this a relay unit in before the whole thing stabilized. And because of the nature, the way the machinery was damaged, he thinks that the doc actually went through the portal. As much as they'd only ever sent drones in, because the notes were missing, and yet when he was kidnapped, the questions they were asking him, it seems to say they didn't have the notes. So he's thinking they might have taken some of the samples and destroyed some of the evidence, but some of the stuff the doc might have taken on his own to get it away from whoever was looking for it. Like, that's his guess, is where he is. And it's because the way the components were burnt out on the machine, like, it wouldn't have happened if someone like shot the machines in like a fight. It wouldn't have happened if you just left it on or if you had a power failure. It looked sabotaged, like someone wanted it to run and then stop running, like intentionally locking your keys inside your car, kind of a thing. And because he hasn't been able, they haven't found him anywhere, and everything with it, all of his notes and stuff are missing. And he done these samples on the organics. He really thinks he's on the other side of this portal, and that they need to he needs to rebuild it and have you guys go through and find him and get him back in case he is injured or unconscious or needs water or food or something, or it has gotten lost in these caves, wherever he might have ended up. He thinks that's where he is, and he can probably get the machine working. So when they all kidnapped him, he said that woman, Hannah, she kept pressing me for where he was. And that was one of the things that set off flags with him, but also how the machine operated and trying to get it working again. In fact, she didn't even push him on the actual samples, biological samples themselves. It was all about this machine and getting it working again. And it seems that's all they cared about, and that's why he was still alive, is because they're just trying to get this information out of him. At one point, there was someone had called her office because she was in this room interrogating him. Someone came in and said, "There's a call for you," and she looked worried. Like the way this woman is, he said, "You must have seen her." Like, well, yeah, you actually in this, you were with him. The level of confidence in that woman, like even though she's dying, she's still acting like she's gonna win. Like nothing can beat her down, nothing worries her. But the look of worry on her face when that guy came in, he said, "I'm not a good actor, and I can tell I gave up my poker face because she looked worried. I saw her face, and when she saw me make that face, she was pissed, and they immediately like put the blindfold on and roughed me up after that." So he really thinks he got to see her hand of cards in that one moment and how worried she was. Um, he said, "Now I told her the complete truth that I could not get that machine running again, and that is mostly true. It's mostly true. Um, I can fix it, but getting more of the catalyst to get it working again, that is going to be near impossible, and he's going to need help with it." So he said, like I said, I'm a terrible liar, but that's the only thing that saved me. Is the truth is, put a gun to my head. There's no way I could have gotten that thing running without that catalyst. Um, he said, yeah, and they had me hooked up to this bat-shaped device with these leads going up to my forehead, and in that way, somehow they could tell whether I was lying or not, and that's probably the only reason I'm still alive. He said, I'm thinking it was some kind of lie detector, but that was just my guess, and it really told me. Whenever I refused to answer or I was evasive, I felt this like really strong headache coming on, and only when I told the truth, my ice cream, then did the headache stop. And he says, I was able to kind of feel it out and tell. Oh no, even oh, yeah. I was able to tell like just enough of a lie about the catalyst and stuff to suffer through the pain and endure it, but not let them know I wasn't completely lying in any case. So as far as the machine, he says, once I rest up a bit, I maybe give me another day, I can get back in the lab. I can order the replacement parts. That's not a problem. Getting it run when we actually getting it running, I'm gonna actually need apple crisp, even better. When we actually get it running, I'm actually going to need everybody's help here. So some of your powers and some of your technical abilities to help stabilize the portal, because we don't know what state the relay is in on the other side, and we want to make sure it is rock solid stable before I'm going to risk sending any of you in there. But I can start building all of that. What I need you to focus on is getting a supply of the catalyst. So as far as the catalyst, this is not going to be easy. So the machine, this sucker is electrical, but it needs a nuclear reagent to break the quantum field so that the 1.21 gigawatts of electricity stored in the capacitors gets channeled across the bridge to the other side of the portal and not just into the test pad. Otherwise, it would just melt anything there. What we're going to need is cesium-137. So I have... So here's your periodic table. Here's cesium. So this stuff is heavy, and I don't mean weight. It has an atomic mass of 136 daltons, whereas lead is 207. So it's not like heavy, heavy. No, I mean like dangerous. Not only is this highly reactive, but cesium as an element is one of the most highly reactive elements there is. So as as you see, it's in the first column. These are the alkali metals, along with sodium and potassium. And you know what happens when you take raw, and maybe you don't. I think Blitzman and probably Blue Suit would know. When you take just raw sodium and throw it into water, it explodes. There's just a massive release of heat and energy as all that sodium bonds to all those water molecules. And a lot of the alkali metals behave in the same way. Cesium does the same thing. When you have a sample of pure cesium, even just normal cesium, 132, which is the stable kind, you have to store it in submerged in oil. If you take a piece of cesium out just like on a spoon in the air, it will start smoking, the smoke billowing off of it just from the water vapor in the air reacting to that cesium. Not only that, cesium is one of the elements that has more isotopes than any other. So I don't know, say hydrogen. Well, then not really any. I don't know, like carbon. Oh, here, this is what I want. Isotopes. So like these are all the isotopes of carbon, and pretty much all of the elements have it. So the number of protons in the nucleus, that defines what that element is. If it has one proton, it's hydrogen. You add a second proton, it becomes helium. That's what the atomic number is, and that's why these numbers go up. But some nuclei also have neutrons. There's a proton, electron put together. And the neutron doesn't really, you add more to it, it doesn't change the element. It's still gold or whatever it is, but it can make it nuclearly unstable. So it'll eventually break up and throw off some of these particles to be a smaller atom. Cesium has more isotopes than almost any other element in the whole table. And cesium 137 is kind of the nastiest of them all. It is extremely radioactive, on top of being extremely reactive. If you've ever heard of nuclear fallout, this is it, cesium 137. Out of game, like when Fukushima went up and there was the cloud of radiation that was thrown into the atmosphere and went all the way across the Pacific Ocean and covered like half the United States, that was cesium 137. And the reason it is in fallout is because it's so reactive, it bonds with water and stuff in the earth. So it goes right into groundwater and then just sits there on the surface. And you drink it, it goes into your body. And now that it's on the inside, all those alpha particles just start ripping all your soft tissues up. Whereas even your skin is enough to stop, some radiation, anything other than like neutron radiation or ionizing rays like gamma rays and stuff. With the particles, it's once you kind of swallow it, it's in your body, it's right next to your soft tissues. That's when it gives you cancer and kills you. But cesium is especially nasty for this reason, because it is nuclearly unstable, this one isotope, but also it is so reactive, you never want to get this like leaked out into the environment. It kills you. The other thing about cesium 137 is it doesn't exist on its own in nature. The only way to produce it is through nuclear fission. And at this time, and he says even for the doc, fission it's understood in principle, but we have no idea how to do it ourselves. He said the only one that has ever made this stuff, and we don't even know how she did it with nuclear fission being the only way. He said there was this old supervillain that operated back in the 1920s. She was known as the Eisenmacht, the Iron Maiden. And she said one of her masks is still on display. And this is what her mask looks like. Seems to be a rather thin, tall woman on the thin, not thin, skinny though, like wiry. She always wears this like full suit of gothic plate armor, and usually some big kind of robe or cape, something very regal and dramatic. The armor usually has this like gold scroll fill work and stuff, and she wears this full metal helmet that seems to come in two pieces. And I mean, like, there's like metal of the hair, like you see it here on the back. They kind of clamp together, and then she has like a metal kind of a chin piece covering her chin. And in the eye sockets, you really only ever see this blackness. You never saw these human eyes behind it. And there was one battle where her some of her armor was cast off or blown off, including a piece of her helmet, which they covered, and it's in one of the museums. And one of the people who was on scene caught a glimpse of her and said there was flesh and hair there before, it was kind of like the cowl was thrown over. So it wasn't like there's no one underneath it, but she generally operates like her minions are these robots, which look kind of like knights in suits of armor, these kind of clockwork knights. So there was a theory that she was only some sort of robot herself, but that one big defeat where she lost her helmet kind of said, well, there is someone behind it, but mechanics seems to be how she operates. She operates out of a castle in western Poland called Burg Eltz. That's this here. And a side note for the German and for the meaning of this too. So you might have heard of a Schloss, like Schloss Neuschwanstein. So when we say castle in English, in German, you can either say Schloss or Burg. Schloss means a castle as in a palace. So, I mean, it has the little tower with the ramparts and maybe you have a little moat, but it's more for look and feel and style. It's more about palace, whereas a Burg is a castle as in a military fortification. Like it was designed to be held like a keep, like Minas Tirith or something like that. And that is this place. Now, to be fair, it was a military installation back in the 1200s or so. So, it's not like it's got sort of modern design to handle tanks and artillery and stuff, but it is more than just a cute little palace somewhere. This was where she had operated out of with her army of these robots. It is in Wałbrzych, Poland, although this western part of Poland had been part of Germany even before Germany was Germany, like Prussia back in the day, and they called it Breslau. So, in the context of this time, it would have still been called Breslau, as it's really part of the empire, even though nowadays it is part of Western Poland. Oh yeah, the 1200s. It was part of Germany going back to the 1200s, which is about the date of when the place was built. She and her army of robot soldiers wreaked havoc back in the day, mostly thefts of rare materials, so precious metals like gold and platinum. And because some of the precious metals they focused on were like platinum, they don't think, the Empire, the police don't think it was a value thing like robbing banks. It was for like electrical components and scientific applications. She also stole a lot of rare earth elements, heavy metals, radioactive isotopes, any material science kind of stuff. Her last attack was on a train from Warsaw to Berlin carrying uranium from a new mine that had been discovered. In fact, it was in the early days when they weren't even sure what uranium was. That was July 16th, 1925, and it's currently July 1934. So this is 11 years ago. But after that attack, no one ever heard from her. It was kind of like, all right, well, we got to get ready for a next attack, and it never came. And some people, like, they sent, investigation squad scouts to her castle to try to spy on it and see if she was still there. Was she gone? Had she abandoned it? And none of the scouts were ever heard from again. They all just vanished. Anyone that went near this castle vanished. And because she never showed up to steal stuff again, they just left the castle alone. They just set up like a fence cordon like a couple of miles back, and no one's ever been to that castle since then. And they thought, let sleeping dogs lie. Let's not even go there. But back in the day, she was a really formidable villain. Of course, back in the day, they didn't have any superheroes, so they don't know how you would all fare. But she is the only one that is known to have actually made this cesium 137, and this is what they need to get the portal open. The original sample that the doc had when they started their experiment was the only sample he had. It was a very small vial of it. He doesn't even know, the doc didn't even tell him where he got it, but he suspected somehow he'd stolen it or negotiated with her, with the Eisenmag, to get it. And that is going to be your job, is to go in, take a train into Poland, to Breslau, infiltrate this castle, just get the cesium and get out. I mean, you can level the place, you could go pick a fight, you could try to take her down and arrest her, you could scout it out, or you could go total stealth and just sneak out as a heist. But as far as Meriden just says we need the element. As far as what the police are telling you, I mean, they're almost advising you not to go because how many people have been lost there. But if you do go, you are not expected to bring her back like in chains. If she gets away, or if you get the cesium and get away, that's fine too. It's all up to you how you want to tackle it. Out of game, you just have flexibility. If you want to go and destroy every robot and capture her, you're welcome to. I'm not saying it's going to be too easy or too difficult. Just saying you're going to get to role play how you want to approach this. Like with the airfield, how you went all stealth. You go stealth part of the way, and then if that doesn't work, go with some other way. But you can kind of think of how you want to approach it. For now, you basically have time, so you're basically going to be taking. It's a 12-hour, just a passenger train trip from Berlin to Breslau. So
Heist.
I'm just gonna dress up as with a beret and say I want to look at the tapestries.
I'm sorry, I have a sniffle. So here's where you started off in Vienna, right near Bratislava in Slovakia. You'd taken that flight. Here's all of Germany. Landed in Berlin. They've been operating out of here. And then here is where Wałbrzych, Breslau, Poland is. It's a bit east over the border from what is currently Germany, and then north, just north over the border from what was the Czech Republic on Czechoslovakia. Yeah, it was really the Slovak Republic again is closest to. So a bit of a run, and the train ride will be about 12 hours. The one that you're going to be taking, it'll start at 7 p.m. and you'll arrive the next morning at 7 a.m. The department is covering your costs for the tickets and such. There is a second class, like passenger space, where it's just like airline seats, just a bunch of seats. There is a first class where you have like the little rooms with a sliding door, enough for 4 people. And there's also sleeper cabins where you have again like a sliding door and then 4 beds. You all have first class tickets, so you have 2 4-person passenger rooms. You also have 2 4-person sleeper cabins if any of you want to sleep for the night of the trip. And we'll just start off playing it as you're going to be essentially getting on the train. It'd be the next day, and then heading off. So I just want to last check in case anyone had anything else they wanted to do. You are going to be returning to Berlin. This isn't the end of it. You're guessing Hans Ollerin and Chuy de Jesus are probably still making their runs, and they'll be available at the airport if you wanted to leave back that way. But you are going to be going back to Berlin, back to the lab, help Meriden get the portal fired up, and then go through. That'll be your next mission, to find the dock. But for this one, it'll just be a long train ride to Poland. You'll scout out the castle from a distance, figure out some kind of plan, and then go in, get the cesium, and then head back and finish your experiment. So is there anything anyone else wanted to do, or any questions you had before we leave? I know I've been doing a lot of exposition and chatting. So yeah, go ahead, Lars.
So you said that they basically like cordoned off around the castle, like a ways out. Is there an actual fence around it, or is it just sort of like posted with signs?
It's
or something?
not like an actual fence that would like physically keep people from climbing over anything. It's just one of those, like trespassing private property on order of the government. It's not physically to keep anyone in. It's to stop the errant hunter, from wandering through the woods too close and accidentally getting himself killed. No, really, most of the people in that area, they know all about the castle, and it's the kind of thing parents tell their kids, be good or I'll leave you at the castle gates, kind of thing. No one really goes anywhere near it. But just in case there were hikers or tourists, they're like, "Oh, look at that pretty castle. Let's go up there." There's just a fence and all kind of signs saying like, "This you will die in this place. Don't go anywhere near."
Fuck off.
And they're honest about it. They're not like lying, saying like, "Oh, there's pits you might fall in." They're like, "This is a dangerous place. You could get hurt. Don't go in here. Restricted area and all that."
Gotcha. So, guys, is the general consensus we should try and sneak in and get what we need?
That's what
When it comes to the actual plan, you don't have to worry about coming up with the plan now. You will have some time to scout it out. I mean, honestly, I don't have like the maps drawn up, but I was going to have some things drawn up to give you some ideas, and I figure we'd have a little bit of a brainstorming session. I didn't want to go too far into it and make it, because it's hard to come up with plans like this, but just let you kind of play with the problem. Yeah, go ahead, Lars.
Well, the thinking was if like what we should bring,
exactly. I was
plan
like, let's
ahead.
get sneaky equipment.
Right.
Oh, true. As far as so the main city of Ulrich, which we'll be going into, they do have a local police department there with your basics. I mean, maybe they might not have the fancy gear, but like climbing gear, harnesses, the pitons and the boots if you wanted to climb, or camouflage clothes, or what do you call it, ghillie suits. Like they would have your standard fare stuff if you needed things like that. For Berlin, this would be if you needed real like I want a sniper rifle that's like an anti-material rifle that shoots this distance or some kind of funky thing like that. You could.
I would think at the minimum we would want probably climbing gear and equipment and camouflage suits and backpacks to carry this stuff. But I mean, we have our very own equipment guy.
I want none of them. I'm like the Boy Scout. I have everything I need. I can. My coat actually is kind of like a cloak of Elven's kind, so I can fade in. It's like a chameleon. I've got the jump boots. I just upgraded my grapple with this level, so now it's a claw, so it can shoot 100 feet, claw in, and actually pull me up, or I can disarm someone. Yeah.
Right on.
How about binoculars or telescope?
Yeah.
I'm good there. You guys might need some.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, when we get to the city and you're kind of in the scouting out phase, I mean, you could even go scout the place out at a distance. Maybe get some optics, do distance, go back and say, okay, we're gonna need climbing gear. We need this much rope. We're gonna need a boat to go through the moat or something. You'll be able to come up with that kind of stuff, and pretty much anything you want to come up with. In theory, you can't see the place yet, but you would have probably put more time. So if there was something special in Berlin, I won't say like, oh, too late. If you want to pitch what you're thinking of, we can make it work at that point. But I mean, not only will we come up with that at the actual time, like I said, because it's difficult to kind of come up with a plan. Just while we're away, like in this week, or if we have to miss a week, try brainstorming about those heist movies that you watch. Some idea. Like I want something that like lowers me down to the ceiling in case there's pressure sensors on the floor. Like just spitball and write on your character sheet ideas for stuff you might think of, or like a grappling hook, like something. Say we get really high and shoot, and it would hook into like the tower, and then we lock that off, tighten it, and then we put the little things and like slide on wheels down the cord, things like that. It's I want it to be somewhat of a group writing thing where everyone's kind of throwing out ideas for disguises, or well, do we have pictures of what these robots look like? Could we go to the local museum and get a suit of armor, or Taylor, can I go to the museum and like see what the suits of armor look like so that he can kind of study it to make his body turn into a suit of armor and look like one of these robots or something like that. Come up with these ideas so when we come to actually planning it, everyone's got some ideas to throw out, and then we'll throw them through and try each of them out.
I was thinking some kind of EMP device, but I think that would be more in blue suit area.
I haven't got
as
that.
far as
That's a neutralize or a disable, like the neutral, the neutralized power. I have one. So I have a bunch of stuff that I'm working on. So I always think about different things when we're playing about stuff I want, but I don't give it to myself immediately. I'm always like it's an iteration, or I'm working on it, or I'm working on adding it, which it makes more sense that way as I'm iterative. So I don't always upgrade all of my stuff. But yes, I'm thinking of a neutralizing thing. And I'm not high enough level to make one yet.
Mhm.
Eric, if you're talking to us, you're muted.
I was about to say. Usually it's just-
Yeah, I've done Zoom all week, and yeah, I still forgot to unmute myself. I'm not usually muted. That's why. So I was thinking of triangular pyramid-shaped objects that were heavy. Whether it's a magnet or a lead weight that's probably a couple of pounds. So we could toss them out, and any pressure triggers we could trip off with something like that. Because they don't roll, they'll stay still.
Good.
Yeah, I think the point is we don't want to trigger stuff unless you're thinking of
it's like I guess he's thinking if it's like a trap, when you step on the plate, it shoots the poison darts out, so you want to throw something to throw. I guess maybe the only problem there is you're gonna have to carry all this stuff. Well, I don't know. Maybe
True.
Taylor can
I mean, you don't need a
suck it all
huge
up into his
number of them.
body.
Yeah, Taylor's a walking backpack, so there's that. I mean, I also have. I mean, all of my stuff essentially fits into my utility belt and gets absorbed objects. So I don't have room for much else because I'm limited in space because of the 20 item rule. So
Taylor is the black guy in the Jumanji with the giant backpack, right?
Yeah, Kevin Hart, yeah. Well, I've actually been playing it where I should probably keep under the 20 so I don't get like too fat or something like that, or encumbered. Right now, I have like 17 out of 20 items. I don't know if you want to.
Well, I mean the 20 item rule is just like for the game. That's all you can kind of carry. And I mean, if you have all 20 items, it's probably a lot of stuff. But if you have, your bags and stuff that it's all in, so if they're small or normal sized things, you could have all those inside you. It's just things like a bowling ball, or I think we talked about like a television. I mean, there's no television in this, but something that big, yeah, it would make you actually look huge because it's displacing all that volume inside of your body. The local police department is also going to have a sample of one of these robots, at least one of the ones from back in the day, like one of her early revisions of like 1922 or so. It is almost completely taken apart into pieces. They were worried that if they left parts of it put together, they didn't know how she controlled them. They didn't want them coming alive, so they kind of overtook them apart. So they have it kind of knolled out all on a table to see where the pieces would go together. Blitzman as a scientist, you'll be able to study it, and then Blue Suit as a mechanic, you'll be able to study it to see kind of what makes them literally tick as kind of a clockwork device. But you'll be able to study at least an earlier iteration. And she does seem to have different robots over time, similar to like the Iron Man suits, like the Mark One, the Mark Two, and there are even some robots that are specialized for tasks. Like there'll be one that's like the welding, bot that goes into the bank vault, pulls out the welders, and just cuts all the locks on it. And then other ones which are the standard, fighters, and then some that are the big heavy ones that just pick up all this gold and carry it out. So there will be other iterations, but this might give you some kind of insight. Like you said, if you wanted to take one of these powers and put a personal spin on how it might work.
Is she essentially kind of like a Doctor Doom type of thing?
Yeah, she's my dime store Doctor Doom.
Sure. No, I mean that's just I was the feeling I was getting the fortress and like her being an old
it's Eastern Europe, scarred person in kind of an armored suit, technology, and who knows, maybe magic and technology, but and then the big cloak and the furs and the suit of armor, so kind of a you think Doctor Doom as far as style, and then also think of that as far as they described her heists and stuff that she did. She does seem to be very intelligent, so it's not about brute. I mean, obviously the robots can do brute force, but there is a bigger plan behind everything. And then I don't know, as dangerous and as powerful she was, to just vanish from the playing field, as it were, that's almost more concerning about what she might be up to. So this is all things to think about as far as the mission coming up. But for now, we've just got the train ride to get there. And if you have any ideas while you're, say, throw me a text or an email. Like, you don't have to. You can just write it down for the next game. But you say you happen to think of something interesting, like throw it down, and I'll make a note of it, because I'm going to be writing some of that stuff up, and I can use your ideas in the build. Let's see. So for the train, all the trains in the Empire are like true electric trains. The Empire and its precursor countries all had extensive and robust rail systems. And when they started building their electric power infrastructure, they used the rail lines as the infrastructure for power. So wherever you have one of these rail lines just running through the middle of the woods, next to it at a buffer distance, you have all those long high power lines, with all the trees kind of wiped out. And then with that power, they just have it feeding the train system to get the trains running. They use the rail, so just like the rail lines would connect the cities together, they use those power lines running parallel to the rail to connect power to all the cities together. So if you looked at a diagram of the Empire's electrical grid and of their train system, they're almost identical. They just lay one right on top of the other. So all the locomotives are electrically powered. It's all three-phase alternating current. It's in the tens of thousands of voltages, so the same power that runs on the lines on your street before it hits your house, and the transformer steps it down. Near cities, there's overhead power lines that the locomotive uses a pantograph on the roof to draw its power. And that we have train. You've probably seen this on streetcars. So a pantograph is any kind of a mechanical thing with like the folding pieces. There's something you can use to when you wanted to copy a diagram. So you would have a pantograph and you have a pen on either side. You have it anchored, and then you would trace the drawing with one, and the other one would draw it on the other side. It's essentially these folding arms, and you would use this to essentially keep tension against the transmission wire, to make sure it was always in contact. And then you'd use this bow style, so no matter where the wires were, the elevation changes, it would always kind of keep in contact. Closer to the cities, there are these overhead wires running that the locomotives contact to get their power. But then in the runs between cities, so out in the middle of the sticks of nowhere, they didn't want to be running all these power lines because you have a snowstorm, it takes them down. Maybe if you got in the middle of nowhere and string up the line. So all locomotives are also battery powered. So they have a huge battery bank that stores up enough power. And just like an electrical car, because the runs between cities are known distances, as well as the hill, the inclination, you have enough battery power to make it from one leg to the other. But still, near cities, they have these charging overhead cables. Out in the middle of nowhere on like a really long run, they'll take those high power lines, spin a line off down to a substation, drop it down to 10,000 volts, and they'll have like a little charging stretch that the train will run over, charge its batteries back up. They do this especially at the bases of mountains. So whenever a train is going to be like going to the Alps, it's going to have to climb a bit. They always have a charging run to make sure the battery is topped off before it tries to make one of these tall climbs. But other than that, in the interim, you don't have any of the overhead wires. You just have this pantograph extending up from the locomotive train, the front engine, in case there's one of these lines to get power from. As far as train speeds, and this is something I was curious about. So the steam train was invented in 1802, so the beginning of the 1800s. The slowest trains back then and even today, we have trains that only go about 10 miles per hour. These are like the huge honking, real big freight trains just taking heavy freight short distances. Back in the Old West, it was like the mid 1800s. All of those trains only topped out at 30 miles per hour, which wasn't terribly fast. And they didn't get faster until the 1900s. So like 1910, 1920. If you played Ticket to Ride, like all the special editions of the 1910 and whatever edition, that's when rail travel like took off in speed. But while the Old West was only 30 miles per hour, in Europe, the trains they had in the 1800s, those did get up to 80 miles per hour. In Europe in in our real Europe in the 1930s, in your time period, they did have trains that got up to 130 miles per hour. Nowadays, as soon as you get to 150 miles per hour or over, that's when what you talk about is high speed rail. So those bullet trains, the ICE, the French one, I forget the name. These are the ones that are like the real, nose cone shape. It looks like the front of a jet fighter. And even some of the new, they actually have maglev trains that run now. Those ones, most of them run over 200 miles per hour. The fastest high-speed rail line in operation today is a maglev train in China that runs 270 miles per hour. Now that's the fastest operational speed. So that's like every day it's doing that on the red, like between cities. The world speed record using an actual in production train on actual in production line. So not a test, using an actual, like really fine tuning it. They've gotten up to 370 miles per hour. Now, that being said, with high speed rail, that's just between major cities. So even in Europe today, that's only going to be like the Frankfurt Paris run or something like that. In the United States and Europe, normal passenger trains are still only 80 miles per hour. And that is peak. That means they have it cranked to the nines. 80 is the best you can do. So if you think back, like Back to the Future in Back to the Future 3, when they had to get the train going to get the car up to 88 miles per hour, back then the trains only ran at 30. Although it was realistic that those steam trains could get up to 80, but 88 was definitely pushing it. In fact, for a lot of classes of passenger train, unless it's officially on a high-speed rail rated thing, 80 is actually the speed limit for most trains, like by law, the limit. Even though 80 is the limit, though, they mostly run around 60. So for the context of riding on the train, just picture driving in a car down the highway. 60 to 80 miles per hour, that's roughly the speed. So when you think about like, oh, let's just jump from the train, and you always see it in the movies, like, it's not going that fast. There's grass, you're fine. Like, no, it's like 60 to 80 miles per hour. Unless you're back in the Old West, that's 30. You could survive a tumble into a hayfield at 30 miles per hour, but 60, 80 is a bit. So just to give you a context to how fast you're actually going in all of this. Monorail. Someone else had a meme about that that was out. I love the Gul Dukat Simpson one. That was hilarious. Hey, you're that guy everyone hates. Oh no, I'm Gul Dukat. Just perfect.
Oh, I'm sending you some great ones, man.
That actor, Mark Amio, you want to talk about? I mean, he is like a B-list character actor that no one has really heard of. He's been in a few things, but not much. But he got this one character of this bad guy in Deep Space Nine, and he just fucking crushed it. Like, you just hate this guy. He does such a good job of being the bad guy that he thinks he's great and everyone loves him and respects him when everyone just really
Just such a
hates this
magnanimous
guy.
fucking like
Yeah.
narcissist, and he comes across and he doesn't even like. It's not like you're like, oh, he's so into himself. No, he's just like that's just how he exists.
Yeah.
It's not even
But
like it's
like
crazy.
the Cardassians occupied Bajor, and there was a parallel of the Germans and the Jews, like that kind of a thing. And this is the guy that ran like one of the prison camps where they worked themselves to death. And he really saw it in his own mind that he was helping them, that these were poor, helpless children, and he was so benevolent by giving them a job to do. Like he just played that Nazi mentality to a T. The guy doesn't get enough credit as an actor. I mean, he does again among Star Trek. Oh boy, sacrilege! Star Trek fans. But anyways, yeah, good doctors, Mr. Spock's dank names. So as far as the train ride now, I don't know. I don't have a picture of the actual train here. It is kind of diesel punk looking in its design. There's you have to kind of get over. There's no those billowing plumes of steam. You don't hear that push 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 while you're getting on the train. It's more of this odd electrical hum, and it is really a feat of engineering. Not just the electrical system, but their train system as well. Yeah, even they're similar to the electric trains nowadays. These electrical engines are hyper efficient. I mean, like 90-95% energy efficient, which is just bananas compared to most electrical devices that we use. They're all really horribly inefficient. All of the rectifiers and inverters especially, we use electrical panels to gather electricity that's DC current. We need an inverter to change it to AC current. Inverter technology today is still garbage as far as efficiency. And there's actually rewards out there that if you can come up with a more efficient inverter, you can claim these grants of like millions of dollars, and nobody's still been able to do it. So to have an engine with this kind of efficiency is really kind of saying something. It is a purring, humming beast. Blitzman, as you kind of walk by the trains, you kind of have this respect of the amount of energy and understanding electricity. You could kind of channel this electricity, but to see people doing it with a machine and to see the number of cars that it's carrying, I had to look this up, and a lot of people they don't even say like how many cars is typical on a train. I mean, is it like 5, 10, 100, 500? Like, no one really kind of says. Sometimes when you sit at the crosswalks and the train's going by for freaking ever, you think there's a million cars. So typically, you'll have like 5 cars at the
I think
least.
you just heard from an authority.
But what? Well, I had to look up in a few places, and even then, it's like people answering in Quora. If you go to like all the articles on Wikipedia, they don't really say like the standard cars are always whatever.
Did you see the chat?
No, I have tons of screens open. I can't have a chat window open. What is my? I can't even see where to open it.
I throw out a guess of 50.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see Taylor.
I was just going to say, based on the number of times we hear a train in the background, it seems like
Oh,
a authoritative figure.
I know these long trains.
I don't know. I was going to say I hardly ever hear it. It's only every once in a while. It seems like the noise cancellation kind of cuts most of it out.
Oh, we got
hear it
mine too. I mean, we got ours all the time.
Yours will go every once in a while. So I guess at the minimum, you usually run 5 cars, like up to 10. But in some cases, running up to even like 100 cars or more is typical. So you can't really have hundreds. And I mean, if I'm trying to think, I'm like, I'm not going to do 100 cars. It'll be like however many it's going to be.
I believe it depends on whether it's a commercial, like hauling material or hauling people.
It can be. Usually, passengers are going to have fewer cars than the freight ones. And
Yeah.
also, freight cars run a lot slower. So I actually found statistics on Union Pacific, and Union Pacific is one of the top freight train operators. All of their trains for each year. I mean, you're gonna have faster and slower, but your average is 25 miles per hour.
The track is also different. You can't run a commuter train on a cargo track.
Yeah. So, some of the it's similar with the high speed runs between cities. Some of them, in cases, the tracks can be different sizes, but yeah, like I was surprised at how slow freight actually moves. You'd think like 25 miles per hour. I mean, part of the old west and the expanding frontier, it was because of rail. I mean, you had horses, but you know the horse got tired. You had to bring food out there. Trains were just nonstop people, moving that 30-mile-per-hour stream. Whereas, the Oregon Trail, you had a bunch of people with carts. They had to go up hills. Once the train lines were laid, it just exploded.
Well, that's
And
why
the
they.
thing,
Well, that's why they for the Civil War. That's why they pushed so much extra rail. That's why the North won, because they pushed they like fast track. Like Lincoln was like fast tracked fucking extra rail. Like basically that's the reason why the North won. It's like we have
yeah,
way more supplies than you, and you're living in this. Like we're meeting down in your territory, and you don't have enough shit. We do, So
yeah. It's amazing the impact it has. I mean, Germany in World War One. I mean, those massive guns that they took up into Belgium, those were mounted on rail. These were guns even bigger than the giant battleship guns, and
the
they were
howitzers.
firing these on cities. The
Oh, really?
massive.
So like they're bigger than howitzers? Wow.
Yeah. The size of the one massive one that they pummeled all the fortresses and the bridges and stuff in Belgium when they were trying to push down over and then down into France. It was like when the people actually went back to where these fortresses were. The fortresses were gone, and the hills that they were on were gone. It was just like took it into the ground. The size, I'll have to look up the stats. The size of the shells, it was just. I mean, it's like larger than Volkswagen Beetles that you're firing at these things, and they're not that. They're solid metal. They didn't have depleted uranium and whatnot, but still the amount of mass that they were throwing around, and the windows that they're blowing out, and the eardrums they're blowing out. They had to set the gun up and then fuck off down the hill 2 miles to fire the gun. Otherwise, the blast wave would nail them too. So yeah. Anyways, yeah, the rail's really insane, and I think that's one thing we're gonna have to go to as far as the future for efficiency and travel and freight and stuff is building up our rail system. But whatever. So you have, as I said, two first class cabins which hold four people, and then you have two sleeper cabins as well. You pretty much got like the locomotive, a sleeper car, your first class, second class, two dining cars, and then another first class, second class sleeping car, and then a freight like post car on the back. So people's luggage as well as freight and small freight, postage and stuff that's going to go between cities. Your cars, your cabins and stuff are more towards the front of the train. Um, you drop in, you kind of just drop off your bags of the stuff you don't really need on, but you have the rest of your standard gear on you still. Um, you're on the train for a little bit. You're kind of getting settled down, getting a feel for the place, figuring out your schedule, what you're going to do. It's about the time, it's a little bit past dinner. You're getting a little hungry. You kind of want to stretch your legs. So you all head down to the first dining car, the one that's nearest to all of your cars. And as you all enter the dining car, you've got tables down either side. You've seen like a Murder on the Orient Express. It's this kind of arrangement. It is a rather nice train. I mean, it's not fancy doilies on everything, but it's not a rundown, crappy train. This is like a nice, big, nice operating train. And then towards the middle of the room, you have two, kind of they're like serving stations. You have two people working there. They've got a little griddle going. They've got a bar with drinks, coffee, tea, all this other kind of stuff, and as well as other little dishes, sandwiches, and stuff they're making. And some people are eating in the place. So as you all come into the and for the sake of the game, we're just keeping you all together so you're not splitting up and going to different ends of the train because it makes it difficult to figure out what's going on in turns if it comes to combat or anything else. Um, so you head down into the dining car, and everyone just give me a perception roll.
Here we go.
11.
12.
Was that a
Eric,
Lars? with
Eric
the
got
11?
12.
Eric 12, Lars 11.
13.
Dirty 20.
Lars has not spoken yet until just now.
Oh, who said 11 then? Or maybe that was Eddie who said 11.
I said 11, yeah.
I got 22. Lars got 22.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Mike Scott never showed up.
Nope. His text made it sound more like he was gonna do some other stuff and not play, but
He's got a lot more going on with his daughter, like, now that he has his daughter, and he's dealing with some of that's, like, that's not.
I got with that he had some of that stuff going on.
Well,
Yeah,
now that she's living with him, he's taking more of a role in helping her with her homework and
Homework,
other
yeah,
stuff,
yeah.
And interfacing and spending time with her. So
oh yeah, no,
not that he-
don't get me wrong.
Right,
I
and-
definitely want Isabella to come first.
And that's kind of what it comes down to, is because when she's at Danny's house, Danny just ignores her and just yells at her when she, basically like says, "F you, mom, I'm going out and smoking weed." And so she's rebelling against Danny because Danny doesn't pay attention to her. So Mike's doing his best to make sure he's paying attention. And
Yeah, no, it was more like I misread his text. He said, "Dinner's running over. I'll have to do some things." I thought he said like, "Sorry, I'll be late," but it's sorry for the late notice. So
Right.
I didn't get that. And it's like I said, no worries. If you had to miss this one, it's not.
he does
Like
his
it
best
looks
to
like
try and make him. I know, because I talked to him.
Yeah, no, and he has been showing up to a lot of them. No, that was me misreading his text. So yeah, no, that's okay. All right, so we had Blue Suit at a dirty 20 and Lightning Hand at a 22. So, but I mean, really, everyone is even above 10. So as you're cops, you kind of can't turn it off. You're always kind of making eye contact, looking for someone with the shifty eyes. Looking for the guy with the woman that's kind of got a bruise in her eye or looking timid or something, or the guy that's the pickpocket that's going around grabbing people, and everything seems to look pretty normal. It's maybe it's a higher class of people. Everyone's pretty well dressed. It's a long trip. They're probably going on business. This isn't just a residential trip or a short run. This is a long run. The tickets probably weren't too cheap. Everyone kind of needs to be here for some reason. They all seem to kind of be going about their business. Nothing about there stands out. But the Blitzman and the Blonde suit, you both notice. At the other end, so like I said, you're near the engine, so you're walking away from the motion. So at the far end of this nearest dining car, you see a young girl with braided hair holding a white poodle, looking throughout the car, including under the tables and through the far window into the next car over. She's pacing around and has kind of a pained look of worry on her face. She looks like this. So like I said, she's at the other end of the car and she's kind of holding a dog. It's kind of like nervously looking around, kind of searching the cabin, looking around the people, and as well as looking out the window to the car going to the other end. And if you ever have questions too, like where are there windows? Are there windows on the doors or anything like that? Feel free to ask. I can describe the rest of it so you can see, what you can see and what you can't. But it's up to you to take whatever action.
Can I just approach her and basically I'll just pull pull my coat to the side to show my badge and say, and just very sincerely, like, "You look concerned. Is there something that I could help you with?" Basically, like, I'm a police officer. You can trust me. I'm not some creepy dude just approaching a girl, type of thing.
Yeah. Make a presence check. which I think you've been putting more into. I'll hit you guys with these checks sometimes, and then every time you level up, you come back with like a higher skill. I'm like, oh, you're fortifying where I'm poking at.
Yeah, I made sure to put ones in everything, so I don't have a 0 anymore.
Yeah, at least that 1 die 4 too. It explodes 25% of the time, so that helps.
Yeah, you convinced
Kurt.
me.
Well, the president made sense for my character anyway, so
I'm going with blue suit
38.
to approach the girl.
38. Oh crap. Okay.
I rolled a natural 20, so it exploded. That's
Yeah. Oh, that's gonna crush it. So you do your policeman, like it's like by textbook, how to talk to kids, how to talk to scared people, how to rein in their focus and stuff. And you kind of get her focused on you, so it's like her and you, a friendly face, and she like lets go of the surroundings, and it's like that extending that comfort to a fellow citizen, because at your core, this is what you're trying to do. You're just trying to help people. Well, I mean, maybe some of you like stealing things or doing other fun stuff.
Taylor wants to help too. He just has
He
a
does.
problem.
Honestly, Taylor, I love it when you do your silly shit with your guy. It's always so much fun.
It's one of my favorite things. I just love the flavor.
I never see it coming. It's like, I'm going to turn into a cat. I'm going to go into the pawn shop, and I'm going to try to steal that signed photograph of the president from the United States. Like, yeah, man, do it. Yep, you did it. You got the fortune.
I was thinking if I ever heard some dick on this train, I was going to try and steal his wallet.
Kurt, as Mike is consoling and talking to the little girl, I am very carefully studying her top to bottom and the puppy as well, just to like see if I see anything out of place or unusual or whatever.
Okay. You actually notice Mike doesn't. He's blue suit. He's kind of focused on talking to her. You notice the tag on the dog's collar says Gretchen.
Good cop, creepy cop.
Yeah. Hey, little girl, I like your dog. Can you not leave me in the interrogation room with him? Facing. So she looks at you a little timid at first and a little worried, but then she kind of eases. The pained look in her face kind of eases as she talks to you, as she feels like she's safe with you. She introduces herself as Claudia, and you both, Lars, from studying her, you see this in blue suit just because you're talking to her. You see this. You notice that she has heterochromia. So, with a closer look at her face, you see that she has one blue eye and one brown eye. And heterochromia is pretty rare, especially in humans. So it does definitely catch your eye. Blue suit, you might not know the term for it. Lightning Man, you've had a little more science, albeit more physics than biology, but you probably would have had more time. When you go to school, especially for higher degrees, you're really just consuming books constantly. You pick all this kind of stuff up. So you notice this about her eyes, this heterochromia.
Is there any red balloons around her?
No.
Wondering. Okay.
Not carrying any balloons of any kind. Has kind of a flat appearance here. She's really more, your scared kind of kid look.
I'm just getting that vibe.
She seems to. Well, I know I had. Well, you can't. You're prejudiced because of my history with the creepy little girl characters. Let's see. So the worried look kind of fades. She seems to ease a bit. For both of you, right in front of her, she seems to consider you. So she's kind of weighing your appearance and your feel in her mind, like she's like, how kids are. They can't disguise what's on their face, so you can kind of see the machinations in their mind as they're thinking. You can kind of see her mulling over if she can trust you or not, if you're an authority figure or not. I mean, as adults, you know who a cop is. When you see a badge come out, there's a lot that just comes with that. Whereas when you're a kid, you're like, well, what does that mean? Are you allowed to arrest me? Like, when I was really little, I mean, younger than 5, I must have been 4 because your memories start then. Uh, these kids came by the house when I was alone, and I answered the door, and they asked me about my best friend Rocky, who lived next door. This is in Tewksbury, and I said, "Oh no, he's off at wherever he was," because I wasn't playing with him. And then I guess later his house got robbed. So the police, the detectives came to my house and interviewed me about these kids because they were the suspects. And I still have memories about it being a kid and kind of like I got that they were cops and cops were good guys and they found bad guys, but like I remember that whole conversation being nothing like any other conversation I'd ever had, like with other kids or even other adults. There was an intensity and a focus to it. Like too many eyes were too focused on me. I mean, it did make me uncomfortable, but it felt weird to me.
Right. But I mean, like, so, I mean, if I can, I mean, with a 38 roll, what I'm saying is like I'm coming down.
Yeah, no,
I'm coming down to her level. I'm only saying, hey, look, I'm a person who helps people.
Yeah.
No,
I didn't mean to paint that as her reaction being that way. She does take that moment, and she does kind of let go. You kind of see, like I said, kids are bad liars. You can see that kind of sinking, like, okay, and she's almost kind of able to breathe for a second.
Hey, Kurt.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's giving me the heebie-jeebies. I'm attacking.
Oh, crap. All right. Well, roll initiative. Let me roll initiative for Gretchen.
Just kidding.
I was just telling the damn chief that I trusted all the people in my group.
I don't know. I picked the close-up photo. Oh, maybe I closed it because it had the detail. It was close enough you could actually see the eye color, but she does have kind of a blank expression in this. Now she looks to you like a normal kid. So she does ease. So she says that she and her little brother are visiting their aunt in Breslau. She was in the first class cabin with her brother. She went to the bathroom, and with the dog, she's always going to have the dog with her. She can't let the dog run around the train. She's trying to be, respectful and do the right thing and follow the rules. And when she came back out, he was gone. This is the first time that her parents have placed her in charge of something, of watching under her younger brother. And she said that her younger brother, he's only like a couple of years younger, but she's like 12 or so, and he's like 10. Her younger brother resents the fact that she's in charge because everything else with kids, you're all equals in every way. One doesn't get more dessert than the other. And all of a sudden, now that they're going off on their own, this is going to be fun. Now she's in charge. She's the bossy older sister. And she thinks he's just like fucking with her. Like he's going to try to hide or smash something or get in trouble or something like that. And she's freaking out because this is the first time she's been put in her charge. They've been on the train like 60 minutes and already her little brother's gone and she's going to get in so much trouble. He's not a brat. He's not a bad kid. She thinks he's resentful. And she says he probably ran off and hid somewhere. And if she loses her older brother, she's going to be in a massive lot of trouble.
Okay.
And even as she starts saying this, she starts choking up and her eyes start welling up and she starts hyperventilating as she's kind of picturing coming back to her parents and them saying, where's your little brother?
Right. So as she starts this up, I'll say, it's okay. And it's like, so your name, I said, Claudia, what's your brother's name? And if he's hiding, just so you know, I'm actually a little bit different from the normal police. I have things. I have really cool gadgets, and I actually drop my older brother down from my hat and say, these can help me find him. And I put him back up again, kind of showing her how we're cool, we're superheroes, man.
I mean, even as you start, it's almost like you're sharing a secret.
Yeah.
with her because it's something that nobody else in the
Right.
room knows. She kind of like perks up and is a little interested, and just the glasses like flipping down automatically like that. She's kind of like she's almost like distracted from her emotions. So,
Exactly. That's what I'm attempting to do, is trying to move her away from that and then find out his name and what he looks like, and that I will go find him for her, or we will go find him for her, because I'll motion back to Lars as well, being like he's with me, just so that she can relax with her dog, and we'll go find him and make sure that she's, basically it's just like this intimation of, don't worry, we can take care of this for you. Sure, he is just screwing around and hiding out, but I'll be able to find him, basically, so.
yeah.
Kurt, I'm gonna lean into Blue Suit and say I'll grab a porter to help us out, and I'll start walking away. And I assume, is the rest of the crew behind us, basically, the rest of our guys?
Yeah. You're all still like in the dining
So
cabin.
I'll start walking back looking for a porter, and I'll tell the rest of the team what's going on as well, and tell them I'm going to go find a porter so that we can start searching the train.
Okay. So she says his name is Helge, and that's actually Helge. It's the masculine form of Helga, Helga. So Helga, and she says she actually has a picture of him. She gave her parents, really her mother. I mean, dad doesn't care. A couple of framed portraits of all of them, each of them, to give to her aunt, her mother's sister, to have of all of them, and she actually has it in her stuff. So she goes, she takes her back to her cabin, which is back in the first class, which is just a couple of cabins down from yours, where you're both staying. Well, you're all of you are staying actually. And the portrait is here. So this is young Helga.
Kill that kid.
Mike, find out what he was wearing.
I'm sure I'm basically asking the whole description from her.
Yeah, she gives the description of him is, I mean, it's not an old photo, so this is pretty current. His hair looks like this. You can see from the photo. I mean, I have everything in black and white, but well, actually, I guess they would have had black and white photos back then. But he doesn't have the same heterochromia that she does. And while his particular clothes are different, it's actually it's a mutation. It's not a genetic, so it's not a inheritable trait. It's a genetic change in that particular person's genome. Um, while he may be wearing different clothing, they are roughly the same. So he does have a coat like this, some kind of a sweater. She describes the color of the sweater. She can't remember the pattern, and then she said it's some kind of checkered, this kind of black or white and colored button-up shirt underneath it. So he looks roughly like he does here. In Blitzman, you do find a conductor in just the next car over as you're going to find this photograph. You basically, to the side, tell him, hey, I think we've got a missing kid. We don't necessarily think he's been grabbed, but assume the worst and whatnot. Could you let everyone know? And they do have communication units that can send signals between the trains. The conductors can kind of page each other, and say if you ask for a ticket, no ticket, and they take off, you can say we got a stowaway or something like that. So they do relay to the others the description and the name, answers to Helga of looking for this kid. But other than that, you can essentially search for him. So, as I said, you've got the engine, first class, second class, first dining car. And she said she basically had gone as far as the engine, and the conductor had stopped her there. He wouldn't let her on the locomotive car, but they said that there was nothing there. It was all cleared. And then she herself has checked every car and every cabin, as only a kid does, actually climbing under tables and looking under people's legs. And she's cleared everything up to this first dining car. So you've got a second, essentially a mirror image of that again. So you've got a second dining car, first class, second class, and then the freight post car down at the trail of the train.
Okay.
So that's what you've got if you want to say what you
Sure, and so I'll just say to her, I'm like, Do you guys ever play hide and seek like on your own?
She nods. Yeah, that's one
Does
of my
he
guys.
have like a favorite? Like, because there's certain kids when I used to play, like people used to hide in certain spots. Does he prefer to like hide behind doors, or is he the type of person to go into things and like close lids, like in a trunk or something? Like, how does he like to hide usually from you? Or from,
She says actually, yeah, he's always the best one at hiding, and he's kind of a solitary kid. So sometimes he'll go hide, and we'll just never find him. And I mean, don't tell my parents this, but he is kind of annoying. So sometimes when he hides and we can't find him, we just leave and go play something else, and he
okay.
just stays where he
So,
is.
okay. So
But yeah,
in my mind, he's the type of kid that'll get into a refrigerator and kill himself.
yeah. She says when you said the trunk thing, she's like, yeah, he actually did that a couple of times. He didn't think ahead because they went into the room and like her parents' bed had all these blankets stacked up on him. So they knew he was in the trunk because the blankets are stored in the trunk. Like he's not thinking outside of the box in that way, like the giraffe sticking his head under. But she did say he has done that once before.
Okay. I'll tell her to just hold tight and make sure she's taking care of her dog, and me and the other police will try and we'll do our best, and we'll find him. No, don't worry about that.
And the only thing she insists is she doesn't want to be alone. She wants to go with you. To I mean, one, she kind of wants. She feels like she's responsible.
Mm-hmm.
Two, she's worried that the way he is. He doesn't like respond well to people. That even authority figures, she thinks he's gonna freak out. So she wants to be there to be like, look, I'm not mad at you. Just come on, let's just go back to our car and have some dinner and go to sleep or something.
Sure, why not? I don't see why it's not like there's any danger on this train. I don't see any reason why she can't come
And
with it.
she's kind of excited, like she's got her own personal detective squad with superpowers behind her. So, I mean, she's not happy, but she's excited, like that they're gonna actually find someone that could be fun.
I turn to Blitzman. I go, hey, show her the fingers, and have him do the.
I kind of lean down and cup my hand so that like people around us aren't seeing it, and I'll do a spark between my fingers.
Okay, her eyes go absolutely wide and her jaw drops, and she instinctively reaches out to touch it, like oh wow, what does that feel like?
Yeah. I stop the arc before she can touch it.
She gives that instinctual like ah like, but at the same time like, yeah, I guess maybe I shouldn't touch that. Like fire is hot sometimes.
Yeah, I tell her I'm like no way, and then I go like this and have arcs go between my thumb and each finger. I'm zapping that way.
Okay.
But I tell her like, don't worry, come on, let's go, and I give her my schlag stock. She can't extend or anything, but I give her my flashlight so she can actually use the flashlight. Here you go.
Yeah, she loves that. She's like got the flashlight out, and as you're walking away, she's kind of like talking to Gretchen, like she's explaining to Gretchen what's going on.
Can't carry it.
It's light.
Oh yeah, to extend down. She's got the flashlight, and she's kind of like playing adult, like explaining to the little kid, her dog, what's going on. Like,
Once these guys tell us what's going on, then and the fact that they've already done the front end of the train, I'll grab one of the other guys and we'll go to the far end of the train and we'll work toward them. That way, if we do find the kid, at least he's sandwiched between our two groups.
For the way the story will go out, I'm just going to keep everyone together, just because it's too hard to split people up with talking to different people in different places. I mean, I got that, and I knew people might have different ideas for how to search the train, but to keep it easy, I'm just going to keep everyone together in one.
Okay.
Group. But understood. We'll say like the conductors can check the other end and try to meet you in the middle, but you guys will all sweep together.
Okay. Very good.
The little girl and her 5 companions in the run.
Can I flip her my badge real quick?
Sure, if you want to.
Yeah, I'll just like secretly, just like right behind my back, just like. I was thinking about giving her the fez, but I was like, eh.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go.
That might border on sexual harassment in a strange way. What's this drippy? I think it's something in my hair.
I'm just gonna jump off the train.
So she kind of pins the badge on her shirt. She has this kind of like this red thick wool blouse on, and you all start heading off looking for. Well, I'll just leave these up. I guess I got nothing else to show right now. So essentially everything is swept back. So you have the first dining car. So you move into the first dining car, and besides just making the perception check, are there any is there people you want to talk to, or places you want to check, or places you want to look
I
here
think
besides your standard check?
I'm actually gonna drop my older brother down. I mean, I understand like it makes me look weird. Don't care because it gives me a bolster to my perception, and I can use detection if I want to. And detection, like I said, could be the body fluids. It could be it's kind of like someone has a secret door. Like you would see where the dust. Like it's just an enhanced perception of stuff. So
Yeah. Or if there were two seats and someone had been sitting in one would look a little warmer than the
exactly,
other.
it kind of gives me that enhanced sort of look. So it's like seeing stuff in HDR as opposed to normal bullshit.
Yeah.
So do you want me to just roll perception or?
Yeah, so I'll roll perception, just
Yep.
doing a rolls. I just want to see beyond that. Is there any people you wanted to talk to, things you wanted to ask people, or like, can we try looking, between this lady's legs under up her dress?
Right. The only thing I would do is I would look for people who are paying attention. People who are reading or people who have are looking up the thing are not looking or not people watching. So what I would look for is I would look for people who are actually either engaged in conversation and looking up as we walk in, as in they're paying attention to what's happening. So that's the sort of person I care about. The other people who are just not they're just toned out. There's no reason to talk to them. So that's the only people I would be willing.
Or similar to like what you did with watching the crowd watching you on the first one. And I always want to roll perception, so you don't know what the rolls are. But then having to roll perception for 5 people, all with different dice types, is a pain in the ass. So yeah, everyone just roll your perception for me.
Kurt, I want to be looking for any kind of trunk or baggage that would be big enough to hold a kid his size, even scrunched up.
Given your question, dining car. But if it does come up, I'll mention it.
Okay.
Remember those last 2 games when I was rolling garbage? Now we're not in combat, and I'm rolling 20s like you wouldn't effing believe. Fucking kidding me.
I got to hold 10.
Hold on. I have to. They have to explode.
So I guess I'll let's say first is anyone over 15?
Yes.
Okay, 2 or 15, and then anyone over 20.
Give me a second.
Wait, I'm 53. I'm 53.
Jesus.
Personally, I wanted to go look on top of the train. I don't know why, just to check. And so I rolled the natural 1 with a 1, so it was a 2.
We'll pick him up later.
Yeah, it was 20. It was a total of 27. I bombed out on the back end, but still.
All right. So, Metamorph, in this dining car, it appears one of the chefs working here, they make this pasta fagioli, which, you remember from back in your time in Italy. This guy has got to be Italian. Everyone makes pasta, blah, whatever, but you smell this and you're like, oh, you remember your mom making this stuff. This is so good. You forgot that there was even a girl here. And you just, he's got a little bit of a tin so people can take some. You don't have time to eat, but you just grab, a little bowl, scoop a couple spoonfuls in, and you're like, oh,
Wait, nobody told me about the pasta.
And it is delicious. You can tell, you can give the guy a tip if you want to, or ask him where he got the recipe, or slap him. It's so damn good. And these guys, they just don't appreciate really good pasta.
Oh yeah, I'll give him a tip.
For the rest of you all, you do notice a lot of people looking up. I mean, you are a bit of a crew coming in here. Jesus, what's going on with the dope show and the goggles, and you've got this like little girl and her dog and a flashlight and a badge out front. You know, it's kind of a big production, but at the same time, seeing the little girl and the flashlight and the badge and stuff, it's like, oh, it's kids on a long train ride. You know, it's a thing. And like to a man, everyone, well, not all men and women, they just go right back to their newspapers and shit. Like none of them is really paying you any mind. They could kind of care less. They're all just watching what they're doing. As far as trunks, containers, there's really nothing in the dining car for anyone to hide in. You know, the only place to look is really the two stands on either sides where they've got kind of chefs working. You know, they've got one of those like little flip up parts of the counter that they go behind, and with a glance, you can see back there with all of the storage and stuff. There's really no place to hide. Like there's just full of pots and pans. There's no closed drawers or panels. It's all open, and everything's just kind of held down with these like kind of stretchy cords, so that if the train hits bumps and stuff, you don't have pots going everywhere. But it's all open. There's no enclosed places to hide. And you ask them about like even like whatever you have refrigerated, and they do have like a little small kind of a freezer thing that they show you, and they're just chock full of stuff. There's no where a kid could be hiding, you know, in freezing death or anything like that.
And obviously, they didn't notice. They were too busy.
And yeah, they said we've been working, and as far as the people, they're like, I mean, yeah, there's kids on the car, but we haven't noticed.
Is there a waiter or a maitre d, or is it just you go up to and you order and you sit down? Is it like
yeah, you kind of go. One of them will do service. They'll take stuff out, drinks out to people once they're ready or done. So they are a wait staff and cook, prep cook, and at the same time. And really, as far as the staff on the train, you've got engineers, conductors, and then the dining car staff. It's pretty much two per car working. And as far as here, no one is. If they've seen a kid, they didn't notice when or where. Yeah, I think I saw a kid on the train at some point, but there may be other kids.
So I just say to them, hey, and I show the picture that she has. I say, hey, listen, just if you see him, you know, just tell him, you know, his sister's looking for him and she's very worried about him. I'm sure he doesn't care, but maybe try and keep him around and we'll come back through if we don't find him.
Yeah. So I mean, from talking to the conductors, they can say, you know, if anyone sees anything, find one of you or one of the conductors, and they'll relay and let the other ones know. So pretty much not much else there. So you move on to the next cabin, which is a first class cabin like yours. So this is the kind where, and the train car. So every one of the doors between cars, you know, it's the door with the window taking up the upper half. It slides to the side. Then you've got a little bit of a walking platform with a couple of chains for safety, and then the next door. So it's like, you know, you're 5 foot. There you go. Your 5 foot space, and then the door of the next one. It is the summertime, so it's not, you know, raining. It's not cold or anything outside, but you know it is loud out there, and I guess it would be maybe possible to climb down outside of the chains and stuff, but it looks awfully dangerous. Like a kid would have a very hard time climbing, you know, to basically from seeing it, you don't think if he tried, he'd most likely be dead. If you shake the whole train front to back, there's nothing, then you might consider actually going up and checking the roof and stuff. But looking at it, you're like, there's no way a kid could get up here. They do have a kind of a ladder mechanism that you have to kind of put together and hang, but it's not like rungs that anyone could just take up. It would be too easy. So you feel confident you can kind of move on to the next car. The first class car is, you've got most of the car is taken up by the bathrooms on either end, and then each cabin, and then you've got this narrow little passage on the side with windows along the way, and then again the glass leading to each of those little cabins. You know, it's sort of like, you know, you're going from the middle out to the side and then back to the middle. Every one of the cabins, there are 6 cabins each, and then 2 bathrooms on each side. Each of these cabins has a sliding door with a glass window, and then the 2 wall sections also have a window. All 3 of these do have blinds that people can, you know, it's just like 2 brass rails with like little green curtains attached to top and bottom, and you can kind of pull them to kind of cover it up. And all of them but one are open. You can kind of see the people in there. These ones, they do have like one fold down bed, but they're mostly meant to just sit in. So they're like 2 bench seats, enough for 4 adults. There's space on the floor for like an attache case or something. There is rails on the top for putting your luggage. And going through, you can see all of them pretty clearly. One of them does have a larger piece of luggage, with like kind of like a trunk up on the rail. It's almost like a carpet bag, like carpetbaggers, see that kind of carpet bag top. So one cabin does have one of those. All the windows are open, and there is one cabin where all the drapes are closed. And you can say whatever you want to do there.
This is like totally reminding me of Enola Holmes. I don't know if you watched that yet, but
I did, and I loved it. I thought it was really good.
it's
was
just
a
it's
lot of
totally
fun.
like with the kid in the thing. Yeah, just I don't know. I'm just
Well, did you ever watch Young Sherlock Holmes when you were? It came out in the '80s.
I think I watched an episode or two. I don't remember. I remember the Young Indiana Jones. I don't remember Sherlock Holmes though.
Yeah, I watched it. I still like it. It doesn't quite stand up to when you're a kid, but it was one of my favorite like kid movies where they were older. They were like teenagers, or most of the characters were. I think Watson was younger, but it was neat seeing kids like doing detective kind of stuff. And Enola Holmes made me think of that almost exactly. But yeah, so whatever you want to do with move on or check out these 2 bits.
Well, I'm just gonna do detection on the luggage. I don't want to go through people's shit, but I basically still need to make sure because he gets into trunks and shit. I mean, he could go.
Even if he threw out everything in the trunk, like right next to it, so there's like some really.
Yeah, none of the other luggage it looks like you could fit in, and there's no other places to hide. It looks like it would be big enough for him, but it is up on the rack, and it, at least from your alder brill, nothing stands out. It's not like half unzipped. There's no footprints or anything like
Right.
that. I mean, I suppose you could ask the people in the I mean, you don't necessarily have to ask them to open it, but you can ask them about it. Or
Yeah, did you see a kid walk in here and get into your freaking trunk? Like,
yeah. So, if you don't want to be asking to actually open it, they'll just say like, "Oh yeah, no." One of the guys like, "Yeah, that's mine." Like, it's got my. He does. He sells pieces, parts, not jewelry, but like hats and shoes and whatnot. And that's like his bag that's got all of his materials and stuff and whatnot in it. And he's
I'd have to ask if he carries Sandine products.
He says, yeah, actually, yeah. There's this one line of ties and the tie tacks and the pre-tied ties that you can just kind of slip on knot. He's like, yeah, they sell pretty well.
I hold out my tie tack and so, what do you think of these?
He's like, oh yeah, hey, you've got great taste. Yeah, they're good stuff.
Yeah, it's my dad's shop.
No shit. Yeah,
Yep.
Well, he doesn't say that literally, but
Right.
whatever. I guess the polite 1930s.
I
with a
give him
small
my
child
card.
present would be worth. Well, he says, well, you seem like you're busy. Like, come by and talk to me later.
Oh, yeah.
I want to.
Will do.
I always tie into the garment biz. What's hot? He's like, women in shoes, man. Like, it is like crack to them. You sell them a nice pair of shoes and it makes their day. He's like, honestly, I've been thinking of dumping the hats and the rest of it and just getting the shoes full time. He said the problem with them is you have to put them in lasts to keep them. You put them in the bags to get all crushed, then you take them out, and they don't look right. They get creases in the leather. They're so delicate. On the road, it's hard. I can only take a limited. That's why I do the tie tacks and stuff, because you can lay them all flat. And I like the lacy stuff, but people look at you weird when you have a bag and
Oh, yeah.
spills all his lingerie falls out. You're like, I'm not a freak. So, like, yeah, he says, yeah, come on back. I want to hear about your dad's shop and all that stuff.
Quick question.
Yeah.
A round in this game is 15 seconds?
I think it's
Is that correct?
Or
is it something else?
I think isn't D. I think it's the same as D&D. Isn't D&D 6 seconds?
D&D 6
D&D
seconds.
is.
I thought this was 10 seconds, honestly. I don't know.
Or say if someone wants to look it up, feel free. I think Palladium was the one that did 15 seconds.
Oh,
which is
okay.
Way longer.
That was it. I couldn't remember, and I tried to look it up, and I couldn't find it.
Yeah, I think it's in the combat section. If anyone looks
Okay.
that up, but I
Not
seem to think,
that we need it now.
yeah, I seem to think it was the same as D&D.
Okay.
Yeah, so nothing in there. And then what about there's the other cap with the shades are drawn. How do you want to handle that? Kick the door down, smash the window, or knock, or
Knock.
It's 6 seconds, by the way.
yeah,
Thank you.
6 seconds. So the same as D&D. Well, 10 rounds for a minute. Yeah. So you knock on the door and they open up and you can. Someone wants to play.
Sorry,
play
I don't
space.
mean to be distracted. Real quick, we have a stray that's been coming around. So the local shelter gave us a humane cage to be able to get, because this poor cat just seems she's very like, she actually came out today, and we're trying to catch her so I can get her over and see if she's chipped, because I keep posting and no one says if they own the cat. So I just heard the trap go off because I have my window open. I can see her right out here because she's under my porch. And I look over and I put the flashlight out, and it wasn't a cat that I just trapped. It's a possum. And I don't know what the fuck. I don't know how the fuck I'm supposed to handle this now. Anyway.
Well, I do
What's
know. I do know. Unless they have rabies, they are a really good animal to have around. They like eat ticks and do all kinds of.
Oh, sure. Like, I have no issue with the possum being around. My problem is, how do I let it out of the cage without having it, like, try to bite me and shit?
bite you or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I don't know how the cage. Are you able to like open the cage and leave it open and walk away without it closing?
I hope so, yeah. Yeah, I hope so.
Because I was thinking if you put on just like the thick work gloves, that'd protect your hands in case it tried to bite you or something. And I'm thinking if you opened it, it's not like it's gonna bolt out and come at you. I think it'll stay scared.
Yeah.
If you can lock the door open, then just go inside, then it'll probably just take off.
So I think I'll let it stay here tonight, and I will probably handle it in the morning. Because I'm going to deal with this now. Anyway.
So we essentially the one with the one trunk or carpet bag seems to be all right, and then you knocked on the other door, the one with the shades pulled, and they open it up, and it's a couple. They're not mid coitus or anything. They just seem to be chatting, but they do seem to be that age of like like early 30s, maybe mid 30s, maybe just starting a family, but they just seem to be chatting, and they've got their own. They don't have any large containers or anything like that. But it's just the two of them in there. If you want to say anything, or if anyone who wants to do something.
Just curious as to whether or not they saw a kid. I'm sure they would have noticed.
Yeah, they said no. We've just been in here the whole time, chatting. We haven't noticed any. Actually, I wasn't even sure if we noticed any kids on the train. So yeah, nothing comes out back about that. And I'm guessing you want to check the bathrooms on either end too.
Yeah, I was going to say check the bathrooms.
Yeah, I was gonna say we were
The bathroom when you get it to it, it is occupied. If you stay and see who comes out, or you can knock on the door. There's a little bit of bumping around and flushing of the toilet, and the door opens, and it's a young kid, but it's definitely not the kid you're looking for. This kid's probably 13, really tall and skinny. His face is not doing well. The poor kid is definitely going through a phase. I don't know if he's eating chocolate, but he's definitely got some bad pimples going. And he says yes, but it's that like real crack in the voice, like yes, And then as soon as he hears that, he's embarrassed. And Claudia is a little bit younger, but he's it's still kind of a young girl that's right in front of him. He seems kind of and he's got all these guys with badges standing around him. So he's kind of freaked out. Like, what is it?
Well, to be fair, I don't have my badge out. I just, it's. Yes, I know.
I feel for him, and I pull him to the side and say, "Hey, we're just looking for this kid. Have you happened to seen this 10-year-old kid?" And I show him the picture.
He says, "No, I haven't really seen any of the. She's the first kid I've seen on the train so far, but I don't know. I've been in the cabin with my mom the whole time.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah. If anything with the girls, he would want to ask you, like, say, as an older guy, does it get any easier, this thing with girls?
And I turn and say, no.
It never does. If anything, it gets worse.
Yeah.
Because you hit this certain point where all girls start calling you sir, and it freaks you out. You're like, sir? I'm not that old. God damn it, I'm that old. So yeah, you pretty much cleared the first class cabin. You move on to the second class cabin. As I said, it's kind of like your airline with like 2 seats on either side. Some of them will be in a row, and then some of them will be back to back with like 4 people facing each other. There you don't notice there's a couple like people in their early 20s, like maybe a high school student, but no one of that age. The place seems relatively full. Maybe a few of them are at the dining car, but you can see from a first glance you don't see anything. And there's only one trunk-ish looking thing on one of the racks. So everyone, just give me a perception check for just searching the cabin, between the chairs, underneath people's coats and whatnot.
21.
Well,
41.
Holy crap!
My 20 exploded.
Like
I-
we get
What
into
a-
battle,
what a
we're like
night to have
awful.
that.
When we're looking for a kid, man, we know how to fight a kid, but we want to hit someone. That shit ain't happening. I gotta say,
Yeah.
I was gonna say I have to do this more often and like drain all of your good rolls.
Yeah.
That's not true. I like it when you guys do well. Except when you almost 2-shot one of my main villains.
Yeah.
But that balanced out because when I made a healing roll, I rolled like an 8 and another 8 and another 8, so he seemed to be okay. It lasted long enough. It was fine. So in this cabin, it would be a little bit more difficult to politely and deftly search underneath people without literally pulling out badges and saying whatnot. And I guess in a way, technically, you're kind of out of jurisdiction. It's not difficult, but it's not perfect. Like if you got a really sharp lawyer and he saw your badge and your ID, he could probably argue and tell you to fuck off and leave him alone. But that's not too bad. But your rolls are so high, you're just able to deftly see around. Like the trunk, you're able to kind of give it even a bump or a jostle, and it doesn't feel all that heavy. It must just be like blankets. You're able to just like deftly and politely sweep through the whole cabin, and you can clearly see there's no kid around in this one. And the bathrooms are only on the first ends of the first class, so there's no bathrooms. Well, actually, no. Sorry, there are 2 bathrooms at the end, just side by side, but they're both open and unused, so that it's clear there. First class one. And then so this one's clear, and then you make it to the sleeper cabin. So the sleeper cabin looks similar to first class, except the little passage side thing is on the opposite side of the train. There's still bathrooms on opposite ends. There's still 6 cabins, but on these cabins, the side panels have no window. It's just solid. The door does have a window, and it does have a curtain on it, but more of the curtains are closed, just by a matter of fact. You notice when you first got onto the train and you passed your sleeping cabins, all the curtains are closed by default, whereas one of the first class cabins are all open by default. As you go by the 6 cabins, 3 of them have their curtains slightly ajar or open, and you can see there's nobody and there's no luggage in them at all. And the ones that are open, you can they're not locked. You can open the door and take a peek around, and there's really no free space for any kid to hide. So it only leaves 2 cabins where the door is closed and the curtain is completely closed. And we'll just do the first one. So essentially the second to last and the last one. The second to last one, you just want to open the door, you want to knock, or however you want to handle it. Anyone can pick it if you want.
I think we'd knock.
Kick in the door.
kick it in.
Now we
Yeah,
know.
gets kicked
we know.
off.
So on the first door, you knock, loudly enough, but not overbearingly pounding.
Police knock.
And there's no response.
All right, open the door.
Is it locked?
It's not locked. The door opens up and there's nobody inside. And a search through the room, there's one attaché case laying open on one of the beds. It's got a bunch of papers in it and a couple of actually, it's a bunch of pocket watches. They don't appear to be like a salesman's thing. It almost seems to be like a collection or a tinker or a hobbyist. And the blue suit, if you want to take a closer look at the watches, it is a nice collection. Not in that they are valuable, but they are like a sampling of all of the major clock kind of developments. Like, oh, they've got the 205. That was the first one where they did 2 counter springs and.
Oh, so it's like a door-to-door salesman type of case or something.
Well, not salesman. This seems to be either a collector or a hobbyist, and he collects the watches that don't look, not because they look nice or they're expensive, but he's a fan of the art.
Yeah. Megator,
Like-
Mega T, Mega 2. He wants everything.
Megator, Mega T, Mega 2.
Yeah.
They're like you're like, oh wow, that's actually you're like you had at least one of these to practice, putting them together and taking them apart and whatnot.
So he doesn't have one of mine, huh?
And on the suitcase is RBD, Romeo Brava Delta, as far as the initials on it. And then the case itself is also, it's well built but not fancy, so not super shiny fancy. And the papers, you could go through the papers if you wanted to, but that's getting a little too personal. It's like reading someone's mail.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that anyway. It's just curious.
And then that just leaves the last cabin. So if you knock again, there's no reply. But if you check the door, it appears to be locked. It's not. You can't open. You like knock. There's no response. You give it a slight pull, and you feel that resistance of it hitting like against the lock.
Can I pick the lock with my gloves?
Yes, yeah. So make a agility check.
So I'll turn to Claudia and go, hey, watch this, and you'll see like the little things will come out of the tips of the
Yeah,
fingers.
the blade's gonna like stick out of the gloves, and you.
So I get bolstered on lock picking, which is agility.
I keep lookout.
She's shining the flashlight on the little lock hold, like to try to help.
In the standard little kid fashion. I'm holding the light for you.
Are you
Yeah.
freaking
Which
kidding
means
me?
the light is right in his eyes.
How many 20s can I roll when it's not combat? Evidently, that's 3 so far, or 2. Fuck. Kidding me. Okay, this one goes here. This 8 exploded. This 4 is sticking. I'm picking the shit out of this lock. I'll tell you right now.
Boy, I hope there's none in there.
All right. Yeah, okay. So it's 20. Come on. Go. 20. 39.
So not only do you pick the lock, and not only do you like not scratch the lock face or anything, you also pick it like silently. Like there's not even a click. You like ease the thing tension against the spring. It doesn't even make a sound.
Like butter.
You're able to like, silently open up the door. There's no luggage or anything in the room, but on the lower left bed, it seems to be a child with his back to you, like laying on the bed, facing like his head on the pillow, like he's sleeping.
Okay, so I turn to Claudia and I say, "Is that your brother?" And get her.
She looks and she can't quite tell, and she like shines the flashlight on him, but there's enough light in the room, like she thinks that's gonna help somehow, and she shrugs and she's kind of like, can I go in and touch him or
I'm
something?
just like, hold on, and I say, "Hello." Tickets! Tickets!
Okay.
There's no movement at first, but then there's like a turn, a jerk, and the kid rolls over and turns around, and he is like almost the right shape and size, but the hair color and the eyes, the face, the ears are like way off. He's got this like raven black hair and like super white skin, so it's almost like you can kind of see the skin through the hair. And as young as he is, it just like the white skin, and it kind of makes his cheeks like pop. So like what would normally be flushed just looks like bright red, like rouge almost on the kid's face. And he does have these ears that kind of like fold out. That's funny. My own, I'm seeing my own video is frozen. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I see it.
Right?
Did a little
So,
bandwidth.
but you can hear me okay? I'm not cutting out.
We can hear you. We just can't see you. It says something about CPU or low bandwidth on your end.
Okay. That's odd. Let me even stop video. I'll just stop video. No, I'm just hearing a little bit of static or something. Oh, well, we'll see what happens. So you really thought it was him, but it's not. It's just a different kid, and he's also a little freaked out. Like he just woke up like from a nap or something, and there's all these adults with their faces kind of peering into his cabin, going tickets, and he's like, "My mom has a ticket. She's in the dining car."
And I just say, okay, dining car. Sorry to bother you, young sir. And I pull the door closed and close it.
Okay, you head back out. And then you check the far bathroom. It's also not in use, so you pretty much feel that the cabin's been cleared. And it just leaves the freight post car, and the rest of the conductors you had passed in the previous one, and they hadn't noticed anything along the way. They said they had looked in the freight car, but they hadn't really searched it. I mean, there's a lot of crap in there. So you had, I mean, obviously they did look. They are technically doing their job, but as the police, you're like, come on, man, like you gotta look everywhere. So you make it to the freight car. You're all inside. It's relatively dark in here relative to the other one, the other cabins you've been in. There is a door at the far end which would lead to the back of the train, but it's usually locked. And then on either side in the middle, there's like a large. It's like this whole section of wall, like a 10-foot that would slide open, so you could actually put ramps and like bring heavy stuff in. On besides that middle bit, on either side, there are just these big long racks with like 3 layers, and there's just all kinds of. I think I even wrote. Yeah, you went to the freight car. It's dark. The walls are lined with shelves, which are covered in various luggage, trunks, containers, packages, parcels, bags, and sacks of various sizes. And then in the middle of the room, kind of piled on the floor in like a little long French fry strip, is a bit of extra boxes and packages that weren't able to be fit on the racks of luggage. And as I said, it's relatively open space, so everyone make a perception check before you do actual like proper, specific things you want to look.
Get ready for my next fucking 20.
Yeah, I know. So I guess everyone roll, and then raise your hand if you're over 15.
11.
25.
25, right? And then anyone else over 20. Wait, okay, so it's 25 and another one over 20. So Blitzman and Metamorph, you hear kind of a bumping, a thumping, and either like a mumbling kind of sound from the far end of the car on the right. And Claudia and the dog, Gretchen appear to hear it too, because the dog kind of perks up. And as you move towards that end, she goes running over there with her flashlight as well. And she stands back, so you go all the way to the end of the car. It's on the far end, the lower section. You do see like a steamer trunk. And she's standing over by there with her back up against like the door on the wall and is shining her flashlight on the trunk. And she's kind of making the signal like she's going to go open it, but kind of checks with you because you've been you've been the boss on the whole trip.
And I just tell her, I'm like let's hide and seek. So flash the flashlight, and I'll go take care of opening it very slowly. You know, like, because I'm just waiting for you to go roll for initiative, because this is gonna be fucked up.
So you mean just hold the flashlight? You mean turn the flashlight?
I just tell her to like I'll open it. You hold the flashlight, and we'll slowly.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what she was kind of anticipating it. Like, let me just stand and help and shine the flashlight. But also, she was like, should I go? You know, she doesn't know procedures and whatnot. So she's like, okay, go ahead and stand up. So you head over to the steamer trunk, and the steamer trunk appears to be locked. You hear kind of a muffled, but it's like a subdued
All
sound.
right, well, let's get them lockpicks out again.
Yeah, she's almost cheering you on, like, to the pick, to the lockety pick.
Fire the
Yeah, steamer trunk.
Holy shit. Which one goes away? So 11, 25.
Oh, fuck, crap. Yep, same thing. You definitely, you feel like the little click. You pop it open. You pop the top of the trunk off, and it seems like it's packed like rough tumble with like quilts, like they're just jumbled up on there. And you pull all the quilts out, and underneath them is a small doll, and there's this muffled sound coming from the doll, and it even has like it seems like an off balance motor on it that's spinning because it's kind of like shaking a little bit, and you're kind of like, what the you look at like kind of the other guys almost as
No, I look at Eddie and go, what the fuck is this? Because you're into the fucked up shit.
But it's odd. It's making these like this even out. It's making this muffled boy kind of sound. And you look at the girl like holding the dog, and her face is now dead and emotionless.
Oh boy.
She flatly says, "Now." Her first, she says that her face turns into a wry smile. She waves and falls backwards, almost like something just like keeling over dead. On the floor behind her, you notice that her shadow, and it's dark in here, so why does she have a shadow? But it is this inky pitch kind of blackness. And when her body hits it, she just falls through the floor and vanishes.
I'm not helping anyone anymore. After this, I see a kid, I'm just beating her. So what happens to my flashlight? Does it fall to the floor? Or does she take it?
Yes. The flashlight and the badge. Well, actually, no, the badge is not there, but your flashlight does fall to the floor. It's just her and the dog fall into this hole and fall through. Behind you, several men appear out. 4 men appear out of the darkness, out of nowhere, holding pistols. The man in the front says, "I am Thursday, May 5th, 1929, and the Empire will reckon me." And we will roll for initiative next week.
Yeah.
Yeah, I be the anarchist then.
I wasn't thinking about it, but then I should have realized my history with creepy little girls might have been too big of a hint. So I was trying to play up the, and she did. I mean, even this is the moment before combat, but if you go through and you think of like what your perception would have been to like detect faking this, you're like, this girl is like a phenomenal actress, because
Sure.
just those little looks, like that look when you first extended to help her, of her not trusting you, and then her weighing in her mind, you're like, how is this kid faking this shit? And like that one moment, she almost did kind of look like that, where there's just that lack of emotion in her face when she says it, and then just a wry like smile and a wave, and she falls back and vanishes. And this is, and Eric wasn't here for one of the earlier ones, so one of the groups that operates around the Empire is called the Days, and each of them has lost something to the Empire, like, that someone, like their brother was kidnapped, or their daughter was raped, or like some horrible thing was done to them, at the hands of the government, or at least so they believe, and there was no justice. The government did nothing, or was responsible in some way. So they give up their name and they take on the date that this person was taken from them as their name, as a way to internalize and never, kind of like Fahrenheit 451, where a person becomes a book. Like, they become that day, they learn everything about that day, and they know the story of and they memorize the story of what happened. In one of the earlier adventures, there was like a traffic accident, and there was a truck along the side of the road in front of this big Catholic church, and everyone got the heebie-jeebies. It looked weird, and they started checking it out, and the whole truck was just packed full of fertilizer, and it was a bomb that they were going to set off and blow up the church. So they had to get these guys away from this detonator button they had in, and it was a whole big fight, and there were people around, and then some of the people in the crowd ended up being agents of them that kind of came and started attacking them. So they didn't know even how many people they were having to deal with, and it ended up being. There was one clue about this one safe house. Actually, it was also why I mentioned it. When the cops came and took them all away in the paddy wagon, Oliver Ramos actually teleported into the paddy wagon with the guys, and he didn't quite torture them, but he did kind of rip from their minds rather violently where their safe house is and what their plans were and who their boss was. And they do seem to operate as a very efficient terrorist network. Like, they actually have cells they operate out of, and only people in that cell know the other members in that cell. And because they use dates as their names, none of them can ever say, "Oh, well, that's Fred and he lives here," because none of them know. So they're this just horribly invasive, cancerous kind of terrorist operation.
And get ready for me to roll ones next week.
Yeah. I was gonna say I'll have to do this in the future. Drain off, siphon off.
Like, I lockpick like you wouldn't believe. They're gonna look like a moron trying to hit him.
So yeah, you were all kind of stacked up in the back of the cab. Well, I know it. I was gonna say we'll have you position yourself, and I'll place you in the car, and then you'll basically work your way back up the length of the So here's the engine. The blue are the sleeper cars. The red are the dining cars. First class, second class, first class, second class cabins. And in each of them, I have. I'll take the roof off, and you'll be able to see the layout of the inside. But we'll pick that up with next time.
Cool. We actually had a pretty good audience tonight. We had about 8 people.
Let's see.
Oh, good.
So I think they're all from Katie's server saying hello. So I'll just say hi to all of them and thank you for watching.
Everybody.
So this is a picture of a log that.
Oh, yeah.
It has a bolt in it.
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah, and then I'll show you the other view. This is my hand next to that bolt. That's how big that thing is. It's like 6 or 8 inches into the log. And it was holding originally, I think it held a wire that went across, or a cable that went across to the telephone pole.
Yeah, I was going to say, something that big, it looks like an anchor for a telephone pole.
And the tree grew around it, and it went in 6 to 8 inches. They put a new one